All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome you to the regular meeting of the Tuesday, October 2nd meeting of the Board of Aldermen. We're going to be standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll follow that with an invocation by Chaplain Grant Arender and follow that with a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you all please join me in word of prayer? Father, as we gather here at this place where our civic leaders are, where our elected officials are, where members of our community are, Father, we acknowledge that we are a broken people, a broken nation. Father, I pray that we as citizens during this time in our nation might be more than Democrats and Republicans, but we might be a people, God, seeking to do your will and to seek truth. I pray for these city leaders, God, as they serve us, that they might be more than Democrats or Republicans, but they might be people truly trying to seek your will and to do the best for our community. We ask that your blessings be upon them. We thank you, Father, for your love for us. Give each of these leaders, our mayor, our aldermen, give them wisdom, give them insight, give them courage, that they may do your will, especially as it pertains to our own city. We ask your blessings be upon us. Please, in Jesus' name. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate you being with us on this our first meeting of the month of October. Our first item of action will be the approval of the official agenda, including considered items. Do we have any suggested changes to the consent agenda or to the agenda itself? Vice Mayor Perkins.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had an opportunity, I think it was maybe late this afternoon, and looking over this agenda again, and I want to call your attention to page number 4, item number 2, E. The item reads, consideration of the approval of an amended annexation plan and to proceed with an annexation ordinance. The comments that I want to make very brief here at this point, it is my opinion that this is a very important matter to many citizens who reside within our corporate limits, and it is a matter of grave importance to those that the city is attempting to annex into the city. With that being said, I think that this is probably the top priority item for this agenda and board meeting tonight. I've sat through a number of annexations over 25 years, and including the very comprehensive one back in 1998. I think it is incumbent upon the board, in my opinion, I say it respectfully, that we move this matter to the top of the agenda. And what that does, in my opinion, and of course, I'm going to allow, the will of the board to govern and control, but it needs to be moved to the top of the agenda because it will, in my opinion, reveal full transparency. It will reveal full openness and will reveal full accountability. I think we need to move that to the top of the agenda. And a couple more comments I want to preface with this agenda item. I see that the wording is that the board on this item talks about the amended annexation plan to proceed with an annexation ordinance. Let me just say this while we're talking about this agenda item. We either need to move it to the top of the agenda and to perhaps change the wording on this matter, because it is very important that we, as a governing body, give our citizens and those that the board is attempting to bring into the city due process. In other words, this is a legal term that means that the persons in question and the taxpayers in question deserve the right to be heard. They have the right to come in, express their viewpoints and their comments. You know, we are just servants. This is government for the people and government by the people. So we need to move this to the top of the agenda. And it's my respectful recommendation, having sitting through annexations on many occasions, about 25 years, that before the board take any official action on any plan, that the board follows the process of identifying a plan if, in fact, the board desires to do that. But before taking any official action, call a public hearing. Let everybody who wants to be heard. There's no need to rush. There's no hurry. Because when you annex, just like in 1998, there are consequences, financial consequences, past performance, the city's financial ability. These are all things that the court's going to look at if it gets there. So, but I said all these things here because we're talking about the agenda item. It's the wording of it. It calls for the approval of it. But I think more importantly right now, Mayor, the main point of all the things I said for just at this point of the agenda is that I'm just going to make an official motion, and if it may fail, and it may pass, but we'll see. But Mayor, I move that item 2E, consideration of the approval of an amended annexation plan and to proceed with annexation ordinance, be moved to, matter of fact, I'm going to move it right prior to the consideration of the mayor's business. That's my motion, that particular item be moved for consideration by the board prior to considering the mayor's business. So in other words, after the board considers the public hearing, then we go straight into the annexation. So I offer that in the form of a motion there.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Alderman Vaughn. Discussion, and I will be happy to start this off. In our work session on Friday, I think we were all there and agreed to put it a little bit later on the agenda because we wanted to dispense with the public hearings. Felt like they would go fairly quickly and allow those people who are here for rezonings and that sort of thing to remain if they chose or not. It didn't feel like it would be holding up a great deal for our comments. We have a number of items that are currently on the agenda that are on consent. So I think that was the reason that we all at the time agreed that it would be unacceptable to move it to slightly later on the agenda. So that was the thought process at the time, Vice Mayor, and I think that was considered for purposes of helping the people who are here for other things go ahead and allow them to get on out. So further discussion. Alderman Miller, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with the Vice Mayor. Certainly understand his reasoning. My only concern would be that we did give an indication on Friday at the work session, which I'm very aware is not the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen. With that being said, I gave indication to my constituents that we potentially, that they would have time after work to get here if we did it later in the meeting. So I've got one question, and that is Mr. Ronnie Wofford here? Okay, so you've made it to the meeting. That was my biggest concern. Okay, thank you.
Okay, further discussion?
So this is a twofold motion as far as item D is going to be a public hearing?
No.
Can't have a public hearing at this
No,
point?
we would, and let me address the Vice Mayor's comment. We absolutely will, this is an ordinance. So we will have two public hearings as we normally do when we adopt an ordinance.
Gotcha.
So this is merely the drafting, the potential drafting of an ordinance from which we will then bring it forward next time and call for a public hearing, our normal two public hearings for that ordinance. So that was the way this was intended to be handled. And no, we absolutely will do what we have always done when we adopt an ordinance, which is have two public hearings so everyone has an opportunity to come share with us their thoughts in a public forum. So we have lots and lots of talking yet to be done on this matter. So, motion and a second.
I was just
Alderman
curious.
Little.
we're not looking to pass an order, we're just looking at the map and trying to see if there's anyone that has any desire to move forward, correct?
Move forward
Then it would be directing-
and draft an ordinance associated with
None of that's gonna happen tonight.
whatever we can come
Right.
to agreement on tonight.
Mayor, may I be recognized?
In a moment. Anyone else before I re-recognize the vice mayor?
May I be recognized, Mayor?
Alderman Vaughn, I'm sorry.
My question is this, why we keep pushing this? We ain't been here about 2 years, and this was pushed early before we even got 2 years in, a year in, then we start talking about annexation. My question is, why are we pushing this so hard, and then we still got rock roads still left from the 1998 annexation, even though we say we're gonna do something about it, but we haven't completed the 1998 annexation before we go into doing something else. This gonna cost money. Where the money gonna come from when we can't find the money finished of 1998? I just don't understand why we pushing this. We pushing this so hard. What's the reason?
It's only been, no.
What's the reason?
No, we're not gonna be doing that, please. This is a matter for us to be able to discuss. Vice Mayor, you were next.
Yeah, Mayor, I don't think the gentleman from Warren's question was answered correctly. The motion that the vice mayor made was to move the item under 2E to consideration prior to the mayor's business. And the reason I talked about the process, the way that this matter is worded on the agenda does not reflect what was just now explained. It say to proceed with an annexation order, but nevertheless, I want to make it clear to my distinguished colleague from Ward 1 that the motion from the vice mayor is to, given all the things that I said earlier, is to move item 2E up for consideration on this agenda right immediately prior to any business to be taken up by this board tonight. That's the vice mayor's motion.
Okay. We have a motion and we still have a second on that. Any further questions or discussion? Alderman Sistrunk.
Could we get a show of hands about who's here for something other than annexation or because they're a department head and here in that regard?
Mayor, that's outside the scope of this motion.
Yes, it is, but we're in a discussion mode, so.
I appeal that to the city attorney. City attorney, I challenge the parliamentary process here.
You're saying her question about whether people are here to hear the annexation matter is out of the scope of your motion?
Yes, sir. My motion is to move it up on the agenda. I mean, that's the sole purpose of this. That's the sole purpose of my motion is to move this matter up, and I want this answer based purely on policy, not politics. The purpose of this motion is to move this matter up for consideration by the board, not to seek a show of hands. I mean, that's clearly not germane to this motion.
Vice Mayor, I can answer it this way. If your motion, as you represent, is purely procedural and goes to transparency and open government and not to whether or not somebody can attend and hear the subject matter, then I agree with you that it's beyond the scope.
I yield the floor, Mayor.
And my concern was that we have city residents who are here and who may not wish to be here to take part in the annexation discussion. It would help me inform my vote if I knew what the dynamics of the room were. This is going to be a fairly lengthy discussion, and I think we deliberately moved it to the end so that it could have all the time that it required without us feeling rushed so that we could get on to other business. And that was it. But thank you.
Okay. All right. Alderman Vaughn.
Mostly everything else we got, most of it on consent anyway. I see no reason why we shouldn't pull this up. You look at the agenda, most everything you got is consent, and other just it's the city business. There's not too much considering that other than the public appearance. That's all.
Okay. Anything further? All right. We have a motion on the table and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. In that case, it moves up to just ahead of mayor's business, which would be, well, we'll not worry about the numbering, but it would be just ahead of mayor's business. Okay, that item has been moved. Do we have any other items that anyone wishes to put on consent? Alderman Walker.
Mayor, under department business, under F, fire department,
Okay.
number 2,
Okay, do we have
add
any?
that to consent.
Okay, do we have any concerns about putting item F2 on consent? Okay, seeing none, We'll put item F2 on consent.
And Mayor, just let me know, that's with an amendment that strikes the Alabama choice of law provision.
Okay. With that
With that amendment.
modification. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Alabama choice of law provision is stricken. Okay, all right. Anything else? Anyone else wants to
Same
put?
thing under item 11, under I, parks.
Okay,
We can take them one at a time, but I would like to put 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 on consent.
okay. Do we have anyone who is concerned with putting those items that are suggested for consent under parks, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 on consent?
Object to.
I'm sorry, object to number 2?
Still, it's all four of those still planning on the trip?
No, well, yes, the 4 are going on the trip, but they are not staying overnight. So there's a reduction in the cost.
Reductions in the cost.
Yeah, they went from $16.94 to $13.58.
Leave it off.
Leave it off, okay. So do we have any objections to 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7?
I don't, but it was going to talk to Mr. Logan. It was my interpretation from Friday's work session that just knowing that next year's trip to Biloxi will probably be a reduced number from this year's, and then also you're saying 2020 is going to be in Starkville. So, no, that's all. I mean, just a short comment.
2020 is in Starkville, yes.
Yeah,
Because next year being in Biloxi, we anticipate there'll be half or less.
sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
No? Anything else? All right, so 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, I see no objections to that those going on consent. All right, anything further? Alderman Little.
Under mayor's business, the special event request for Starkville High School to have their homecoming parade.
Okay. Is there an objection? Okay, there's still an objection to that, so.
Let's see, under planning, 2A.
Okay, I'm gonna flip over that page there. Sorry, missed it. Page 4, okay. I missed it really badly.
As well as D.
2A, okay, advertising for community development director.
Correct.
And what was the other one, D?
D.
Okay, any objections to A and D going on consent?
On the what?
A and D, under planning, page 4, 2A and D. Okay, there's an objection to both or one?
To D.
To D, okay.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to object to A. I have no objection to the advertising. I'm just against the high salary range on A.
Okay, all right, well, then we will leave them both off. All right, anything further? Anything further?
No.
I'm sorry?
No.
Okay. Alderman Sistrum, did I see you?
The minutes or?
Alderman Vaughn, at the work session, you suggested the minutes. Were you still, you want them to stay off as well?
Yeah, whatever.
The minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Anything else? All right, seeing nothing else, do I have a motion to approve the official agenda with the items, considered items as adjusted and the change in the order?
Move approval.
I have a motion of approval from Alderman Little, a second from Alderman Miller. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Motion carries. All right, next item up is consideration of the minutes of the September 4th,
So
2018
moved.
regular meeting. I have a motion from Alderman
Second.
Carver, second from Alderman Little. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Sounded unanimous. Consideration of the minutes of
So moved.
September.
Second.
Okay, Alderman Carver's motion and second from Alderman Miller. Further discussion? All those signify, please, by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, mayor's comments. Aside from an awesome weekend at Bulldog Bash, which incredible work by our sanitation department, our police department, our fire department. It went off extremely well. The bollards were, and our street department. The bollards were very useful, and I think everyone had a great time. There were no incidents that I know of. And so I think it was another success, and if you look at the pictures there, it's even bigger than it was last year. So it was an extremely, extremely good event, and I thank the Student Association and MSU for all they did to make it safe, and also and clean, and our city workers as well. So it was a really nice event. So
Mayor, did they have any estimate on head counts?
I do not know. I haven't heard yet, but I'm guessing there will be one at some point, but I don't know. Last year, the head count sounded a bit large to me, but since it's grown, I'll go with the number that they give us. But the pictures are pretty stunning. The entire downtown was filled. Oh, okay. Excuse me, Alderman Vaughn. We did not end up putting this on. Would you like to make a
Yes,
motion?
ma'am, please, I'd like to motion put that
To
on.
amend the
Wednesday.
agenda, please, sir? Okay, I have a motion to amend the agenda from Alderman Vaughn to place, replacing the modified road name Roosevelt Taylor Senior Street, approved with June 5th, 2018, to Roosevelt Taylor Senior Drive.
Second.
I have a second from Alderman Miller. Is that acceptable?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you want to add that to, as a part of the consent?
Yes, ma'am, add it to the
Okay,
consent,
so
please.
can we modify that consent agenda to reflect this item? All right, thank you. I'm gonna need, wait,
Thank
I'm
you
gonna,
all. I
I'm gonna
forgot
need
it.
that to read it. That's all right, I've got it right here. All right, I'm sorry. Under mayor's, and I do need to read the consented items. I'm sorry, I was slipping right on by that one, wasn't I? All right, I will take the next several minutes to read the consented agenda items. All right, under mayor's business, we have consideration of the extension of the contract with Cornerstone Government Affairs, Inc. as a legislative consultants, consideration of the approval of the GTPDD cemetery mapping plan for Oddfellows on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive and University Drive, consideration of the contract for traffic control and security guard services with Pine Lake Church on a finding that allowing Starkville police officers to serve as security guards for Pine Lake Church on their off-duty hours while using their Starkville police uniform and gear promotes the public interest and will not likely bring disrepute to the officer, the city of Starkville, or the Starkville Police Department. Under board business, we have consideration of establishing set hours for trick-or-treating of 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, October the 31st, 2018, and consideration of approval of the 2019 holiday schedule for the city of Starkville. We also just added consideration of replacing the modified road name Roosevelt Taylor Senior Street, which was approved on June the 5th, 2018, with Roosevelt Taylor Senior Drive. Under Department Business Airport, request approval of the Circle S flight training agreement at George M. Bryan Field, Starkville, Mississippi, for 1 year, and renewal of the Kiesling Aircraft Rental and Training, LLC, flight school agreement for flight school training at George M. Bryan Field, Starkville, Mississippi, for 1 year. Under let's see, engineering, consideration of rejection of the sole bid for the 2018 roadway base and resurfacing program, project number 18036, and authorizing re-advertising for bids in the spring of 2019. Under finance and administration, we have number 2, request approval of the annual municipal compliance report. Number 3 is request approval of the city clerk, CFO Lisa Harden, to attend the 2018 master municipal clerk session to be held October the 3rd to the 4th at MSU at a cost of $100. Under fire department, we have request permission to issue a commercial burn permit to Burns Dirt Construction to burn cleared debris associated with a future construction project at Starkville October Industrial Park. C is request permission to allow JMCM Consulting to write and develop FEMA grants for the SFD for a 5% fee if the grant is approved for project administration. Human Resources, we have number 1, request authorization to advertise for an equipment operator in the Starkville Utilities Department, New Construction Division. Request authorization to advertise for 3 maintenance workers in the Starkville Utilities Department, Water Division. Request authorization to advertise for a radio operator dispatcher in the Starkville Police Department. Request authorization to advertise for a commercial driver in the Sanitation and Environmental Services Department. Request authorization to hire Madison Smith as an engineering associate in the Starkville Utilities Department. Request authorization to advertise to fill a firefighter position in the Starkville Fire Department. Under Parks, is request authorization to advertise for janitorial services for the City of Starkville Parks and Recreation Department facilities. Number 3 is request authorization to change the classification of Joseph Williams to lead field maintenance worker in the Parks and Recreation Department. Number 4, request authorization to reclassify the Director of Recreation and Sports position to Athletic Supervisor in the Parks and Recreation Department, and to name current Sports Coordinator William Pocup as Athletic Supervisor. Request authorization to advertise to fill a Sports Coordinator position in the Parks and Recreation Department. Request authorization to advertise for a full-time Field Maintenance Worker position. Request authorization to reclassify the Program Coordinator position to Program Supervisor in the Parks and Recreation Department. Under Sanitation, request approval of the lowest and best bid from the Waste Zero, Inc. for the purchase of 12,000 rolls of garbage bags in the amount of $130,920 for the 2018 annual bag distribution. Under Utilities, we have request authorization to accept the lowest and best quote to repair the 200 HP vertical hollow shaft US motor at a quote of $6,535 from Parks and Parks Water Well Service, Inc. 2 is request authorization for Starkville Utilities to initiate a task order with Volkert for engineering services for the Ernest E. Jones wastewater treatment plant biosolids improvements. Number 3 is request approval of renewal of the distribution insurance company property casualty insurance proposal for Starkville Utilities Electric Division. Number 4 is request approval for Nick Fiorentino and Nathan Filippo to attend water operator training in Hattiesburg, Mississippi on October 4th. Total includes 1 night lodging and conference fees not to exceed $250. And last but not least, request authorization to declare the lawnmower model AYP8228A49, serial number 030294C surplus. And that concludes the consent items. All right, and I had done mayor's comments, so do we have anyone on Board of Aldermen wishing to make any comments? Alderman Miller.
Mayor, thank you. I wanted to make sure that this meeting that we recognized the police chief, fire chief, sanitation, everybody that played a role throughout. I know all the departments did in the festivities for Bulldog Bash. I know that both you and your teams worked very hard to make sure that event takes place, and I cannot tell you how appreciative I am and speak to the board and how appreciative we are. And in addition to that, just got me thinking, really in the past month and even the last meeting, I thought about saying something. I've let it sit. I want to thank you all again, because really lately I feel like any of the department heads that I have contacted with an issue in Ward 5, your responses have been efficient and effective. And you don't get told enough how much I appreciate, and the citizens of the city of Starkville appreciate the work that you do. You make this city tick, you and your teams, and that's a compliment to the mayor as well. I've been really, really impressed with all of our department heads. Y'all have done a fantastic job, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. All right, any other comments from Alderman Vaughn?
On transporting people's back and forth to the ball game, do they need a permit with golf carts and things, or they just?
I don't know who's doing transporting. I'm sorry, I don't understand.
You know when they be carrying people's back and forth to golf games, it's a lot of golf carts be used. And I'm just wondering.
Okay, I have not seen the golf carts. Golf carts are not allowed on city streets unless they're street worthy. If they're on the campus, they are. That's the campus to do. But I don't know about ours.
I think you may be Alderman Vaughn, speaking of the electric cars that look like a little golf cart,
right.
And they are street ready. They got to be able to have a license plate, like windshield wipers, horns, everything to fit like admissions and stuff like that.
Okay.
I'm definitely going to ask that question. This is not street legal carts. I'm talking about cowbell carts that I've had the same questions. Did a ribbon cutting out here on the front. You remember
They're
that?
legal. They're street
and
legal.
they're definitely riding up Main Street. Now that's a golf cart. That's not a street. I mean,
Cowbell
that is a
carts is
modified
street
easy go.
legal.
Go ahead. I mean, I get asked that question all the time, because I know the university also outlawed carts last year. Now
And
there's a bunch of golf carts riding
And
around.
I may have used the wrong word, even though they don't have to be electric cars, as long as they are street legal.
No, it's NHV certified. I've done the research, but cowbell carts are not NHV. That is a golf cart that's been modified. They have to leave the factory completely street legal, maintain speeds of 25 miles an hour. Now that's a golf cart. Now what you're talking about is like a gym, which is a Chrysler made, which I've owned. Jason Alderman Walker owns. That's a completely different classification. So let's not get that confused. But
Well, yeah, if they issue them a license plate, then we can sell them street legal. And that's kind of a rule of thumb we go by. So if they go to the courthouse and they get a license plate and they put it on there, it's street legal.
okay.
And Cowbell Carts is running a business, so I feel sure that they've had to adhere to the requirements associated with that. So Cowbell Carts is, to my knowledge, street legal all in the north.
I think going off what the police chief said, my general understanding is that on those vehicles, when they're taxed, is that they have to have all of the specifications of the rear view mirror, proper lights on it. It has to be properly tagged. All of the same indications that you would see on the vehicles or the
Yes, sir.
The vehicle. I don't know what to call them, but like what Alderman Walker has and you've had in the past with the cowbell carts. As long as they have those things and they're properly taxed, my general understanding is that they can be considered street legal.
And this will lead into discussion. I'm actually a big proponent of, alternative transportation, big proponent of Lime ridership and everything else that goes with that. But I don't mind seeing designated areas. I've tried this on multiple occasions. Designated areas, maybe you can't cross a highway, which they do in Peachtree City, Georgia, where if you want to stay in the downtown area and you want to ride on a golf cart that's obviously been modified like the cowbell carts, then I'm all in favor of that. But with a Polaris Ranger riding around town with a tag on the back, I don't think that's a street legal. And I saw 2 or 3 of those this weekend. So people are asking me because they know I'm a owner of that. Can I go get a Polaris Ranger and I'm from Hines County and they'll put a tag on it? Can I bring it up? Well, I don't know. I'm going to ask about that publicly. But what are your feelings? I mean, I can go and show you a couple of them that are hunting rides.
They're illegal if they don't have a license plate.
They do have a tag on them.
Well, if they got a license plate, I mean that's
it.
kind of been our rule of thumb. We don't enforce it if it got a license plate.
That's what I need to know.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Mayor,
Thank
may I
you.
be recognized?
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. Chief, hold on just 1 minute. Mr. Honorable City Attorney,
Yes, sir.
these inquiries that were posed to our Honorable Police Chief seem to have legal consequences. Could you, in my opinion, as a request, as a member of the board, just to give the board and the mayor and the chief of police, in your role as city attorney, I know you attend the staff meetings and let us know the legality of these issues, because we just want to make sure that that the proper legal interpretation is reached. And I know that there's some difference opinion as to what is illegal and what is not legal, and we'll just follow your opinion on it. And so the chief of police certainly has his opinion as to what he deems to be legal, and certainly I think we have to follow his opinion unless you give us a legal opinion otherwise. So I'm just respectfully requesting for you just to share with the mayor and the board if that is reasonably feasible. And I think it is. We just want to be legally correct. That's the bottom line. This world is very legal oriented. So I'd like to know that the answer to those questions. Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Be happy to, Vice Mayor.
Okay. All right, any other comments from the board? Okay, we are now going to a citizen comment period. You have 3 minutes. If you'd like to come address the board about any particular item, you are free to do so now, and I will time it. Get my handy dandy phone out here to do some timing. So, Mr. Turner.
Good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. To the mayor and the board of Aldermen, to the police chief, to the NACP president. The citizens have a few concerns still about the 2 ambulance services. A lot of people still look for the OCH emblem letter. We understand who that is, but they still are concerned about the other ambulance service that they ain't quite got used to, and that they want to know how far it goes so that they won't get confused. We see OCH go one direction, another direction. Also, citizens were kind of disturbed at the situation that happened at the last meeting with the citizens that brought issue, and people watched it and they felt like that was kind of overbearing to a citizen that was in need. Also, again, I say to the military, let us be careful, because the military, from the Green Beret up, they are trained in special ways. If you provoke them, you could come up short.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Okay, anyone else would like to come?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, board members.
Mr. Taylor?
Chris Taylor, name. My question about Alderman Perkins and Vaughn is why we're in a rush for annexation. Because in 2020, they're gonna do a census report. And we're gonna get those reports, and then they're gonna be doing redistricting. So you putting these people, you upsetting certain people, which is a lot of them want to be in the city and some of them don't. So will the citizen that's sitting here tonight be able to say something prior to you all approving this amended annexation? Man, would they be able to say anything?
Well, this is an opportunity right now.
No, I'm just talking about
There'll
when
be
it get here.
there'll be two more public hearings. If we choose to go forward, there'll be two more public hearings.
Okay, just think, 2020, annexation, redistricting, and the census. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Anyone else wishing to speak?
I've got one question.
If you would identify yourself, please. Sir.
Glenn Martin.
Yes, sir.
I've got one question for y'all. What benefit do I get by being annexed into Starkville? You're not gonna build a new fire station. Schools are already consolidated. I've got water, city water. According to the water company, y'all can't take that over because they've got federal loans or whatever until that's abated by. Tags are gonna go up, property taxes. Tell me why I want to be annexed into Starkville.
Where do you live?
Pardon?
Where'd you say you live?
I live down South Montgomery in Quail Valley. Why do I want to be annexed? What benefit are y'all going to give me? Other than higher taxes, higher car tax. There is no benefits you're going to give me. There's no sewer out there. Y'all might get it down there in 30 years. Why? Is it because, like the gentleman said before me, the census, y'all want to get more government funding or what, state funding or whatever it is? Or y'all, I haven't lived over here but 10 years, but from what I understand, y'all hadn't done right by the people y'all annexed in 98 or 99. That's my understanding. You're not providing the services that y'all promised or you're required to. So why would I want to be annexed? Tell me why, somebody. Simple question.
Mr. Martin, you have 3 minutes, and then after that.
Well, answer my question.
Well, we don't engage at this point in time. We'll be discussing that as we go along, and I'm sure that question will be answered.
I haven't heard anybody tell me the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Do citizens get an opportunity to speak during the annexation process?
Mr. Hosford, if you want to come up and say something now would be a good time. We are discussing whether or not we're going to go forward. So this is your opportunity to say something to us at this point in time if you wish to talk about that.
Just
right
to be
now.
clear,
3 minutes.
The annexation process, you won't be able to come back and discuss it only at this point.
No, 2 public hearings.
Okay.
We will have 2 public hearings.
Tonight.
Tonight. No, not tonight. No.
Okay. Well, if I may begin my time then.
Yes.
First of all, I own some property in some of the areas and y'all are requesting to annex. Over the past 10 years, the tax bases of the city and the county have raised substantially. I know every time every one of you individuals go to the city paper and you say it's only $10. Well, there's 2 problems with that. What you do is you raise the millage rate, and then you come back and you reappraise the property. And people don't realize this, because when you say $10, it means $10 on that value at that time. And what you're doing is you're double taxing these citizens. You're raising the millage rate and saying, oh, it's only $10, and then you come reappraise the house from $50,000 to $100,000. So in effect, you've doubled the tax rate. And your answer is, well, the property value's gone up. Well, you start looking at property values in this county, and you compare them to other counties, and you will be shocked at how high the appraisal is compared to the actual value. That is where the problem is. So then we get to today where you're trying to annex more property. Why? What is the benefit to any citizen that's here? What is the benefit to the city of Starkville? Are we spending more money, or are we just going to promise things and not actually do it? I live in the city, but I own property in the annexation area. So I would be taxed there and here. And I see what benefit as a citizen are we giving to my property out there? None. Because you're not going to do what you say you're going to do. Mr. Ward stated in 1998, we still haven't done it. everyone that's sitting at this board, including the mayor, you can say, well, that wasn't me. Well, guess what? It is you, because you've had an opportunity to do it, because you've been elected to do it, and you didn't do it. So before you move forward with annexing somebody else, do your job. Do what you said you would do. Now, there's another issue. It appears as though there's a corner of, and excuse me, it's Louisville Street that they're trying to rezone.
You have 30 seconds, Mr.
And they
Ross.
tore that down. My question is simple. Are we going to follow the zoning plan or are we not? Because I own property downtown. I own a good bit of it. I bought houses assuming there'd be a house next door, not a condo, not a parking lot, not a commercial building. Follow your plan. That's what it's there for. It's not here to change just because some developer from out of town comes in and says, I got $2 million. That's not the plan. You build a tax base by business,
That's your
not houses.
Mr. Hosford, that's your 3 minutes. Thank you.
It's time to
Mr. Hosford.
commit to businesses
Mr.
in
Hosford,
this
that's your
community.
3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to respond to one question he had. Just about the,
Alderman Carver, you'll be
is
recognized.
that fine? Just for an answer to Mr. Hosford's question, that's why I guess the talk or the debate right off the meeting was about whether or not we could have a public hearing tonight, and I asked that question is because if it passes through tonight, then you will have an opportunity to have 2 public hearings. But tonight, this is your opportunity, because when that comes down, the way it's worded, it'll be a motion to draft an ordinance. So to be no confusion, you won't have an opportunity later to speak. So just didn't want anybody to miss the opportunity. If you've got something to say, now is your time. So that was a good question. Thank you.
And I got one more.
Alderman Walker?
Real quick, speaking to the property you're talking about on Louisville Street, that zoning hasn't been changed for anybody yet, and actually it was denied, and they were going to be bringing something back. I believe it was denied or got tabled. But that in no way prevents somebody who owns that property from removing those houses. They could do that by right.
I agree with that, but they should build what.
Mr. Hosford?
They can build what is currently zoned there, and I believe that zoning is R2, if I'm not mistaken, so they could build back to that standard. There's no, unless you wanted to pull and have that part be in the historic district, which the citizens over there did not, there is no protection for those homes like that, none. We can hold the zoning, it is what we have right now, but that doesn't prevent the homeowner from tearing those houses down. Now, what they are bound by is building back to whatever is currently zoned, unless this board decides to rezone, which at this point, that has not happened for that property.
Alderman Miller, did I hear you? Okay, all right. All right, we still, citizens' comments. Anyone who wishes to speak?
Good evening, as I come forward, I'd just like to say good evening to everybody.
Good evening.
Not
Good
gonna
evening,
say no
Ms.
big name because I got time with it. But I want to get up here and say, if y'all would quit using up so much time and let the citizens come forward and say what they got to say, I want you to put that in the notes of the big thing. You celebrated this weekend with Mississippi State. Where was I? I was at home because I couldn't get out of my wheelchair. I couldn't go up and down the road. They had me take the whiskey liquor and then take the folks back to the airport and bring them back. I pay taxes. I pay taxes here in Starkville, Mississippi. And I would just like to say, it's really, really bad. Yes, we have this 6 state out there. How much do they do for in-kind? What do they do for in-kind? Using my money for this. And I would just like to say, we got sewage problem. You're right, you don't want to come in the city. We got one family that's been displaced over in Rolling Hill for almost 3 weeks. They got to stay at a hotel because they got sewage problem. And it put up allergy and it's keeping the children sick. Their children sick. We got to take care of Octavia Hall County. And I don't know what we're going to have to do to know Mississippi State got their own stuff. We need to take care of Octavia Hall County. And I'm talking to every last one of them. And I would just like to say about the Park and Recreation. I stayed on that board so long. We redefine this and we redefine that. How much is it going to cost? We need to know things like that when y'all come back here to a meeting and not sit up on Friday. Most people have jobs and can't come along. This work section is getting y'all in trouble. It's getting you in trouble now because I need to know how much my tax money dollars are being used. I want to know. And I can't have 3 minutes and say all that I got to say. I love, that's my baby, Parks and Recreation. But we are not fairly doing things here in Octavia. Octavia Hall County. On Wednesday night, we have prayer service. Well, of course, it's Halloween. We're going to have people all out in the road, little children, walking all out in the road while we're trying to go to prayer service and come back. It's not safety. Y'all not thinking about stuff like this. Put it on your agenda. I need to be safe. Even if you don't pray, we want to pray. And I'm just about tired of everything that's going on like that because it's really, really wrong. Octavia Hall County, that's Mississippi State. Of course they spend their money here. Yeah, I come get drunk too if I was a drunk. I come get drunk and do this and do that. But you got to understand, we got people on the other side of town, rolling the hill, and I'm going to keep on saying it. We don't even have a good place to go eat. We have people with diabetes. We have people with heart condition. We don't have that stuff on that side of town. Keep on. It's going to fall in over there. That's what I like to tell you. It's going to fall in. Just keep on. Don't worry about the city. But the next 3 years, I'm counting them down.
Your 3 minutes are up,
okay, but I'm counting them down, and you will be gone.
Okay, next person who would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Charles Wax.
Mr. Wax?
Back in April of this year, when the annexation story first came out in the newspaper, several of us and there were affected residents had a meeting and decided what we might think about it. And I helped draft up a letter at the time stating all of our thoughts. I sent that to all of you, and I would just like to know if you got that. I know the mayor did because she very kindly and efficiently responded, and thank you for that. Did you all get a copy of that letter? Because I could resend it if you don't have it. It states a lot of the information that we all put together. And there are 166 signatures on there, so I feel like I'm speaking for those people.
Remind us where you live, Mr. Wax.
Quail Valley.
Quail Valley, right, okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Wax. Anyone else?
I'm Ron Johnson. I'm a neighbor of Charlie Wax, and I'm one of the people who signed that letter, and I'm also strongly opposed to an annexation with big 2-acre lots, and there's just doesn't make sense. And I see some, and the only thing we know, of course, is what comes out in the papers. Nobody told us anything except what's in the paper, but I see a lot from this group toward sustainable things and making this a community that's sustainable to long-term future. And I commend that view. I don't think this annexation is something toward that. And I see a lot of areas in the city and some comments tonight even where focus on improving and increasing the quality within the city limits and then working with Octavia County on mutual things might take us more toward a sustainable thing and allow people who want a rural life to be able to have that rural life without all the rules and regulations that come. And I hope you will please consider that, because it might be a more sustainable thing than trying to annex a huge sprawling area and more urban sprawl. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Ronnie Walford, live in Ward 5, Northgate, but I own property on down Old West Point Road that backs up to the exit ramp coming in on 12 there. And I called Mr. Miller and talked to him about it, and he forwarded me to the mayor, and I come and met with her and talked to her, and she graciously showed me kind of the drawings, because I didn't understand some of it. But my concern on that is mine's a little different. Mine is more recreational. The way that it lays out on that exit ramp is, I got 30 acres right up against the ramp, and then I got some in the front on Old West Point Road. And the original map took all the back up, which is recreational, and there's water on the ramp down there. I pinned in on the water. And talking to Ms. Spruill yesterday, there may be some looking at trying to get some lines or whatever, which would now take the front end but it's only like about 2 houses in there, whatever. But nothing else on Old West Point Road. To get 2 people in right there and killed my back 30 acres that I can't do a lot of recreational on, that's not designed for a apartment complex or a curb market or something. It will cut me off from a lot of things. I just don't think that's feasible the way it's looked in grabbing 2 houses, or mine don't even have a house on the front. It's all wooded area, and it ain't developed. It's behind several houses on Old West Point Road, but my only frontage is on West Point Road by the Beehive. It was originally getting the Beehive, so I'm just trying to stay out of it. It's not like I'm gonna put a curb market or whatever, but it's gonna eliminate me from a lot of things on my recreational. It's a narrow path down there, and you can see it when you come in on 12, so I don't think the city limits for me, and I just don't think it would be fair to grab a couple people. Now, if you're going on down Old West Point Road and you had 30, 40 people, I wouldn't have an argument, I guess. But just to kill me off, I don't think it's feasible and fair on my part. And I want to thank the mayor for showing me that yesterday.
Thank you, Mr. Wofford. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, all right, I'm going to close it as closed citizen comments, and we'll go into public appearances now. We have Muscular Dystrophy Association Fill the Boot Program, Ms. Ellie Denman.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ms. Denman. You have 10 minutes.
Okay. I work with the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and we partner with the Starkville Fire Department each year for our Fill the Boot program. Our Fill the Boot program is a national program that MDA puts on with firefighters all over the nation. It's a tradition among firefighters. We've been doing it for 65 years. We're so happy to have Starkville support with us every year, and we so greatly appreciate it because 100% of these funds that they raise go straight to families in this area that live with muscular dystrophy. What we're here tonight for is to request right now the Starkville Fire Department is doing their fundraiser in front of Walmart's and Kroger's, and we would like to request permission for them to do their fundraiser on the street at an intersection versus doing it in the store. The reason for that is because the street fundraiser for Fill the Boot typically raises a lot more funds than doing it in front of the store. For example, last year, Starkville was able to raise almost a little over $5,000 in several weekends doing Fill the Boot. A city in a similar size in Mississippi was able to raise the same amount in one day on the street. So it's in order to make the firefighters to be able to support MDA and provide us with the same amount of funds, but to do less work and have less fundraisers throughout the year. And I have some information I can give to all of you. It's just basically everything I'm telling you right now. We also, of course, with the street locations, we provide caution signs, safety vests, a safety plan with the fire department that we go through. So there's a lot of safety procedures that we handle, and the training is given to the firefighters so that we can make sure that everyone is safe. And MDA also has blanket insurance, which you'll find is on the last page of that information I'm passing to you. We have an insurance policy to cover firefighters in case anything were to happen.
Okay, and what intersections?
It is on Spring and 12th for Saturday, November 3rd. And that is on advice from the fire chief Yarborough chose that intersection. So.
Okay, I'm not sure quite who to ask this of. That's going to be an MDOT highway. Is there any issue with MDOT getting clearance from MDOT on that?
As far as to block it?
Yeah, or to be out in the roadway. My understanding is you're going to be out in the roadway. Is that correct?
It's on there would be, I'm not familiar with Spring and 12th, but I think that we were saying that there was a lot of additional room on the sidewalks or around it.
We could put it on the truck on the side, put the lights on the side. I guess it's depending on that. basically park on the side, park the truck on the side.
Is it going to impede the traffic or anything?
No.
They're only to approach stopped cars, not to be in traffic whatsoever.
Okay. Okay.
Stops at the intersection?
At the intersection, on the sides of each intersection.
So you're still gonna be in traffic? If the car is stopped, you're gonna walk up to the car that's in traffic.
Well, we're basically trying to get the traffic that's walking to the game.
Were you gonna do it during the game time?
No. Do it before the game.
Okay, I saw Alderman Sistrunk, I saw your hand.
I wanted to be sure about the date, and it is November 3rd, which is a home football game, and you were targeting pedestrian traffic.
Yes, ma'am.
So there's really no need to be in the intersection. We need to be.
That's a pretty big walkway.
We need to be on the right of way or somewhere outside the street itself.
Okay, so you're not gonna be in the intersection?
No, not in the intersection. We can set it on the side.
Yeah.
Okay. Chief, any?
No, ma'am, I don't have any concerns if they're not gonna be in the intersection, you know, because if you're in the intersection, you're gonna impede the traffic even if you're not trying to. But if they're on the side over here somewhere, that is a lot of foot traffic there, so I can see the purpose of that, but anything dealing with stopped cars,
Okay.
I'm not gonna condone.
Okay, I just want to be clear about it. Alderman Little?
There'd probably be more foot traffic over on Russell as you go walking into the university. It's probably a lot safer. That's a lot going on at Spring and 12 at any day, much less game day, as far as from a safety aspect.
Okay.
Maybe something to consider.
The intersection is it's of your choice, really.
Okay, I tell you what, why don't y'all work with the police department and see if we can get an intersection that works better for y'all and keeps you off of 12 is pretty busy street. So, okay. Did I see somebody else's hand? Alderman Carver, did I see your hand?
Not to be offensive at all, but just gonna put this out here, Chief, because you and I are friends, but I get a lot of calls. We go back to just our last meeting about the panhandle and the issues we have in the city. I think your reputation's flawless as a department. I get a lot of calls. Somebody walks up somebody's window, that's a negative perception, let's be honest. And so I would say with that, through this discussion, as far as, I like the idea of those set up in Kroger the other day. I think that's a great idea. I see some pictures throughout this presentation. I think that's a great idea. I'm not a big fan. I get probably more calls about people walking up and at intersections and asking for money. And, I'm personally against it. I think we've had some ACLU lawsuits we've looked at that says that maybe that's not the proper thing to tell somebody they can't, sit out and panhandle. But I don't want your department to be brought underneath this other discussion that we've had in the recent past. So I just say, but as far as set up in a pedestrian walkway, maybe I don't think that's anything somebody can say. On a game day, there's other things like that that are already happening, but definitely I'm not going to be in favor of anything if you're walking up to windshields and knocking on windshields. And so I heard a little bit of that discussion, and then I hear it turning into a pedestrian discussion. But
more pedestrian, we can sit right there with our booths like we did at Kroger.
Sure. But as far as I think they were in Kroger this last weekend, contributed. I'm fine with that. So thank you for all you do, though.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, so you're going to work with the fire department, the police department to get a place that works for you.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And we also have next a 60-day service report by Pafford.
Good evening. My name is Tony Fabella with Packard EMS, the operations manager for the Starkville area. I wanted to start out tonight letting you know a little bit about what's going on. We started service on August 1st at midnight, 1 minute after midnight. I'm going to give you the breakdown of the call volume that we had during the month. We had a total call volume that we ran of 209 calls within the city limits of Starkville. The total number of transports were 149. The total number of canceled calls and or refusals with patient contacts, no patient contacts, public assists, and DOAs were a total of 60. Our average response time within the city limits was 4.7 minutes, which comes out to 4 minutes and 42 seconds. We did have a total of 15 extended and/or delayed responses due to multiple different things. When we first transitioned over and started running the calls, we had an issue with communications. At that time, there was that was all taken care of within the first 2 to 3 days. We had a total compliance of 194 calls with 92.8% compliance with our contract with you guys. I'm going to go next to the September call volume and then the September response, and then continue on through the slide. And the main reason why we're doing that is because we didn't have enough time to compile the information for September because the board meeting was so close. And we have to, with us not being on our CAD system, which can generate all these reports immediately, we had to calculate them by hand because we're using the CAD from 911 from the county and using our Zoll system to be able to generate everything at this point. So for the month of September, we had a total call volume of 195 with a total transport of 155. The total number of canceled calls, refusals, DOAs, no patient contacts, and/or public assists were a total of 40. Our average response time was up by a few seconds to 5 minutes and 27 seconds. We had a decrease in extended responses down to 8 calls, which was at a 3.9% of the total call volume, and complete compliance of 187 calls, which was 96.1% compliant with the contract. Okay. Unit 503 responded to a call. It was actually the very first call on the 2nd of August that was actually dropped to that particular unit. Paramedic Drew Steele and EMT Kim Williams were the crew members on that particular unit. And it was due to a female that was called into 911 as unresponsive. We got there, the patient was in an anaphylactic response, which basically means that she had an allergic reaction. Her respiratory rate and everything was extremely labored. She ended up having to be intubated. We contacted a helicopter and flew her out. That was our first flight, which was within the first 24 hours of us starting service with you guys. She ended up being transported to North Mississippi Medical Center and stayed in the hospital for approximately 30 days. The first 2 weeks after being in intensive care, she was released into a step-down unit and was cared for after that. She was removed from the ventilator and everything and able to breathe on her own. She was then at that point in the step-down unit and then released with multiple surgeries after that. She still had a trach that she's having to use until all of her muscle function gets back to normal. Sorry, have a little bit of a cough and a cold. Anyway, she was sent home by the physicians finally, and at that point she had her home health that was visiting her on her first day home, and she wanted to find out who it was that responded to her. And we got that information from the home health nurse, and they contacted us. So we got with the fire department and found out the crews with the fire department as well as on their sprint unit as well as with us. We got all of that together and arranged a meeting with her and her parents and got to meet her. We had a really great time because it's not very often that we are able to see the outcome of something like that. especially being the very first call for that particular unit coming from Station 4. She is doing well today, and she is very appreciative for everything that the fire department and the ambulance service did for her. Let's see. We are with the fire. Approximately 50% of our staff is approximately 50% of our EMT/driver staff is fire department employees. We have provided multiple classes, including EVOC, CPR, Furno structure training and in-services, and protocol updates to numerous firefighters. And you can actually see the numbers of the firefighters that we provided classes for. We've also provided the fire department with 9 new BLS Furno bags with them stocked, supply cabinets with the stock, long backboards, KD, suction units, and remodel at Station 4. Let's see. We also have on hand for more in-service. It's going to be on October the 23rd, 24th, and 25th. It's basically going to be a skills check-off of medical procedures that we're required to do every day, including Narcan, CBG monitoring, pulse ox, and recaps on documentation and protocols.
Is that the 23rd, the 24th, or the 25th, or the 9th, 10th, and 11th?
I forgot to change that. Sorry
Okay,
about that.
just checking.
Yes.
Thank you.
We had to change that, sorry. Okay. Let's see. We also have been in a lot of contact with East Mississippi Community College, and we have worked out a contract to align with them to be able to provide in-house EMT classes within the fire department for us to be able to help groom EMTs for the fire department as well as for the ambulance service. The contract has already been written and has been, I believe, received by the city, and we're waiting for it to be returned to them for signatures as well as for us. Let's see. On October 1st, approximately 13:30, we did transition from Ottawaha County 911 dispatch to our Central Communications Center in Ridgeland, for short, CENTCOM. Yesterday and today has been pretty busy for us trying to go through that transition, and including all of the end of the month procedures and numbers that I have to come up with from my bosses. So it's been a pretty stressful day. Let's see. Bulldog Bash 2018 really turned out really good for us. We had, in addition to the 3 911 units that we supplied daily, we had 3 dedicated units within the event. One was a critical care international unit that was dedicated to the event for non-transport. We also had 2 supervisor response vehicles and a Kubota response unit that we used to be able to get patients from the incident location to the staging area where the dedicated unit for transport to OCH was going. There was a total of 10 crew members that were at the event, including myself at Incident Command with the police department. We only responded to 3 EMS calls and transported 2 to OCH. I was able to confirm today that the construction will begin on the Station 1 project within the next 2 weeks. We've been waiting on a plumbing bid, and if it comes in this week, then we are going to be able to start breaking ground next week. We got that from our lead contractor. I spoke with him just before coming in today.
Thank you. You're about at your 10 minutes.
Okay. We have been made aware that there have been a few concerns and voices over our on-scene times. Per national standard and our med control physician directives, we must initiate all care on scene for the betterment of patient outcome. We do not load and go. We need to make sure that we start care on scene.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of the board? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. I'm sorry, Alderman Sister.
Really quickly, we get this comment from time to time about the two ambulance services. Pafford services the city of Starkville within the city limits, and would assist if needed in the county, but the service area is the city of Starkville. And if I dial 911, the dispatcher is going to know which ambulance to send, and
Yes, ma'am.
that's
That
going to
is
take care of itself. I don't have to worry about that sort of thing. So,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
Alderman Carter.
And I know with that incident, I read the article in the paper. If there's something we can do, Chief, to honor those from the dispatcher to the paramedics, and if the mayor wants to lead that, if not, I definitely support anything we do either with lunch to them or get them up here and honor them. But I thought that was a pretty inspiring story. And then y'all being new to the community, I think it'd be a good PR. And the second thing is the bollards. Do y'all see, I guess you said you got a Kubota, but the bollards are the sleeves that go into the road. And that was our first big chance with the bollards to see how they work. You've got something, you're talking about critical care. Are they staged within the bollards in the crowd, or are they right outside?
No, they were actually within the event, and they were dedicated and did not move. We only had one transport vehicle that was on the north side of Main Street there at Jackson on the outside of that.
To head to the hospital?
That would go to the hospital, but everything else was contained within the event.
Okay. So you don't see...
And the Kubota, of course, could respond out of that in the surroundings around it.
And it can fit through those, or obviously you got some...
There's not an issue of it getting around.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, all right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, that concludes our public appearances. We'll move into public hearing. Our first public hearing in consideration of rezoning 18-07, a request to rezone one parcel from R1 to R5 and C2 located approximately 360 feet southwest of the center of the intersection of Highway 12 and Pat Station Road. Is the applicant in the... Yes, sir. Thank you. If you would come forward and identify yourself, please.
Mayor, Board, John Granberry for the record, the project engineer for the project.
Okay. All right. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your project while you're...
Yes, so the project is the rezoning. I'll talk about the rezoning now and then the preliminary plat, I guess, in a minute. But the rezoning is at the behind the La Quinta Inn, what was the old Starkville sewage lagoon. The sewage lagoon's been decommissioned for some 50 years now, and it's been completely cleared by the Department of Environmental Quality and closed out. So our developers bought it, TEP Properties, and they're moving forward with developing it into a commercial mixed use on part of the property, and the other proposing an R5 multi-family residential development.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Haviland?
I guess just a couple things to point out. The boundary line for this rezoning, they are requesting to go from R1 to R5 and C2, which is essentially a split zone. You can see here, this is an image from the preliminary plat that we'll be discussing later on the agenda. And right down the center line of the road, proposed road, right here, will be the separation between the two zones. The western half being C2 for a commercial component to the development, and then the eastern half being R5 for a multi-family portion. 8 property owners of record within 300 feet of the subject property were notified directly by mail of the request. Public hearing is noticed by the Starkville Daily News on September 13, 2018, and a sign was posted on the property. As of this date, the planning office has received 1 phone call requesting additional information. The rezoning can only take place if the following condition prevails: either error in the map, which there is no error, or a change of condition with public need. There have been 2 rezonings within a half mile of the subject property since the adoption of the 2013 Starkville zoning map. The property that now houses Haven 12 was rezoned from R1 to B1 in April of 2013, and the property with 300 Traditions, which is the condominiums in the technology park, was rezoned from R1 to B1 for multifamily in April of 2013.
Okay.
The proposed rezoning would generally be consistent with the goals and objectives and the policies of the city's comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is the place type listed suburban center. The proposed rezoning would be consistent with, compatible with the adjacent land uses in the vicinity. And on September 11th, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this request due to change in condition and public need.
Okay, thank you. All right, if you may have a seat right there, and I'm going to open it as a public hearing. This is an opportunity for the public to come speak to this matter, either for or against. If anyone wishes to speak for, in favor, now would be the time to do so. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this matter? Anyone wishing to speak against this rezoning? Anyone wishing to speak against? Okay. Seeing none, I will close it as a public hearing, and the board now will go into consideration of this rezoning request. Do I have any? Yes, sir.
Mayor, may I ask the applicant a question?
Oh, sure.
You heard Mr. Haviland talk about the test for a rezoning, which is change in the neighborhood and public need. Can you address the public need for this particular rezoning at this particular location?
Yes, so, you know, I'd like for us to, I guess, at this time, we've got all of our feasibility studies for the need for the residential have shown that, you know, the location, proximity to the Mississippi State University, there is a need for additional housing for student housing and multifamily housing. Now, the commercial is the same. The commercial that we'll be providing also will provide a mixed-use residential, which will also provide that residential need. The commercial along Highway 12, the adjacent properties are also zoned commercial. The expansion of that commercial with the growth of the market, new market there, and the Walmart, you know, that's all promoting the commercial growth through that area. Those people that are, you know, at that particular corridor along Highway 12, they've, you know, through traffic counts, we've seen that, you know, that there's need for additional commercial use in that area. So it's.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Alderman Walker.
Just have a question. This may be for the city planner. Right now, we're looking at the rezoning. Is just get everybody's bearings correct? To the left of C2 is Highway 12. That's the La Quinta, and that's the Highway 12 extended.
Correct. This is La Quinta, and this clump of trees is where Walmart Neighborhood Market and Market Street comes in about right here.
That's right. So
it stops at that line.
And so if you can go back to the next slide, please. And so what I'm looking at where the road, where those, call it the two zones on either side of the road, that road, is that road going to connect to the neighborhood market, or has the potential to connect to the neighborhood market?
As part of the preliminary plat that's coming up later, we're going to show the right-of-way portion of that and how it extends and makes that connection. But for the sake of the rezoning, we're not rezoning the right-of-way because it technically wouldn't have a zone. So it's not part of the rezoning, but it will be part of the
part of the plat.
Mayor, I move approval.
Okay, I have a motion for approval with finding of fact.
The finding of fact.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Little. All right, any further discussion? Alderman Miller.
Mr. Haviland, on the, what I believe is the comment that's left here by the staff regarding the consistency with the comprehensive plan. Could you kind of speak to that, how that fits with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan if we were to rezone this tonight?
Yeah, this is the page out of the comprehensive plan that speaks to that place type suburban center. And right here in the land use categories that are available in that area, it clearly lists multifamily residential and commercial. So it would be consistent with what the comprehensive plan is saying for that area.
And so would you agree that this fits with the general plan of where we're headed as a city and fitting with the comprehensive plan?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Could you pull up the map? Could you pull this attachment 1 back up?
Yes.
Mayor, as we move forward, especially with any future developments, and I just wanted to make this note as we're talking about this moving forward. Garrett Road right there, it is, especially with an increase in traffic with folks going to the neighborhood market there in my ward, Ward 5, we're in need of a light there, an intersection, a true intersection, and that is a discussion I would like to have soon with the commissioner.
A light
From
on,
Mississippi Department of Transportation on Highway 12, yes.
okay.
I just wanted to make that note to
Okay.
you while we're talking about this. I've had several either phone calls or emails where it's just becoming more dangerous for drivers to access the highway there. And especially as that continues to develop, it just needs to be a focus as we move forward. I just thought it was important as we move forward with the rezoning as well.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anything further? Alderman Walker.
I would say I would agree with that, and I think this gets to the point of the rezoning and meeting that two-pronged test that the city attorney always talks about. Changing condition in the neighborhood and public need that supports orderly and harmonious growth. That's the public need piece of this too, is in order to rezone this, R1 on that lagoon site off of Highway 12 is not R1. And so there's clearly changing condition in the neighborhood. Thinking about public need, I think, is absolutely for how we control harmonious growth. And to the gentleman from Five's point is that there's no question is that as more development occurs on this Highway 12 extended, you're going to see more red lights like you see on the rest of Highway 12. But they're likely not going to put the red lights in until the development comes. And so those are going to be two coming together. Now I think that this is approved. I think it gives more opportunity to have that discussion to how we make it safe, and now also offer people a back way into the neighborhood market, which I think will be quite heavily used.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, we have another public hearing. This is public hearing consideration of rezoning 18-06, request to rezone 2 lots located at 901 and 903 Louisville Street from C1 to R5 with the attendant parcel numbers. Is the applicant here, please? Mr. Pepper, thank you. Would you like to give us just a brief overview of your rezoning request?
Yes, this is part of a continuing of a variance that was granted on this property, and it's really to get the two zonings the same so development could go forward. We've had a lot of interest in the single-family homes in that area, and wanted to see about getting the rezoning completed.
Okay. Mr. Hamlin.
12 property owners of record within 300 feet of subject property notified directly by mail as request. Public hearing was noticed at the Starkville Daily News on September 13th. Sign was posted on the property. Concurrent with the publication notice, the planning officer received no phone calls on this request. Rezoning can only take place if the following conditions prevail. Here in the map, there is no error. Change of condition with public need. There has been 3 rezonings since 2014 within a half mile of the subject property. The first one was 903 and a half Louisville Street. Went from R6 to R5. That is where the site of the mobile home park that was directly behind it that has since been removed. That was in December of 2014. Bentbrook Ridge was rezoned to R3A single family in 2014. And the Josie
What was that
property-
original zoning, Mr. Haviland? It doesn't say in the packet.
We have to verify.
On Bentbrook Ridge? I would say R1, but I wasn't here when that case went through, but I can check it. The Josie property on Yellow Jacket Drive, which is directly north of Bentbrook, was rezoned from R1 to R3A in August of 2018. The proposed rezoning would generally be consistent with the comprehensive plan. The subject's place type is a suburban corridor. The rezoning would be compatible with adjacent land uses in the vicinity. On September 11, 2018, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of this due to change condition in public.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howard. Jason, if you all right, this is an opportunity again. This is a public hearing. I will open it as a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor or against this particular rezoning, now would be the opportunity. Anyone wishing to speak for this rezoning? Anyone wishing to speak against the rezoning? All right, seeing none, I will close it as a public hearing. And we have now the consideration of this request. Do I have discussion from the board?
Man, I have a question, I'm sorry.
Mr. Latimer.
Mr. Pepper, can I ask you the same question? Can you just speak to the public need of having residential zoning in that location?
Yes, I think we've shown public need, one, by the public being interested in purchasing the homes, and another, this type of development selling as fast as we can build. So I think that would show public need.
And what size homes are these?
2 and 3 bedroom.
Price point?
Thank you.
Price point?
I couldn't tell you
Don't
that.
know just yet.
Don't know.
All right, Mr. Wolf.
I'd just like to point out that we're making a land use decision tonight on the rezoning of what the lot would, what we'd be looking at. I think it is generally consistent with the comprehensive plan, and I'm taking a slightly perspective on it where it says primarily commercial in that zone, and that if you look where that zone is on the map, it shows beyond clearly these 2 lots. So I would think in that land type or that place type, we are going to be primarily commercial. This was one that when we looked at the rezoning previously, what was the old the mobile home park, was one that I think people thought long and hard about doing that, and I think came to the decision that we made primarily because it is a landlocked piece of property. You have Starkville High School to the north, you have Starkville High School to the east and to the south. So the only frontage that it has is right there on Old 25. So with that in mind, I believe that this is a very appropriate land use decision to be able to make this, to help keep with orderly and harmonious growth as we continue to see a rebirth and a rejuvenation in Louisville Street and Old 25. So with that, Mayor, I'll move approval with finding of that.
Okay, I have a motion from Alderman Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Sistrunk. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying, I'm sorry, Alderman Miller.
Thank you. I was going to ask Mr. Abbott, you might have said that, what was this passed through planning and zoning? This has been through planning and zoning, there's general consensus there?
I'm sorry.
There was general consensus from them?
I don't remember the vote. You remember the vote? I think it, yeah, I think it was.
I think it was.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, all those, with the motion in a second, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, the next item up under public hearings, we have our first public hearing on amending section 30-32 of the city's transient vendor ordinance number 2012-04, and I will pitch that to Mr. Loud.
Board, just to refresh your memory on this topic, the city enacted the transient vendor ordinance in 2012, which relates to primarily food truck operators. Then in 2015, the Supreme Court case, the United States Supreme Court case of Reed versus Gilbert came down. And what it says is that there can't be content-based restrictions when it comes to signage unless those signs survive strict scrutiny. Since Reed, courts all over the country, both federal appellate courts and federal district courts, have applied the Reed standard to ordinances in municipalities based on solicitation and panhandling. So the city got a letter from the ACLU in August flagging one section of the city's ordinance as arguably non-compliant after the Reed case. A lot of other municipalities got the very same letter. And the problem is only with the first sentence, and really not just the first sentence, but that clause in the middle of the first sentence. The sentence says, "It shall be unlawful for any person to peddle any goods, wares, merchandise, or services," and here's that clause, "or to solicit any contributions of any kind for any charitable, educational, or other purpose while standing in or upon a public roadway." The ACLU's argument was that word solicitation. The ordinance flags that type of speech and doesn't address other types of speech, so therefore it's arguably a content-based regulation. We looked at that and thought that that was an arguable point. So you see the proposed revision down there at the bottom of that section where we say transient vendors shall not block or impede pedestrian or vehicular traffic on public roadways. I propose that language for two reasons. Number one, it addresses what the ordinance is truly about, which is transient vendors. And number two, it addresses a health, safety, and welfare concern that the municipality has police power over, which is commercial vendors blocking traffic on a public roadway. To address Alderman Carver's points from earlier in this meeting and the past meeting, this does nothing, in my opinion, to change the city's enforcement power over panhandling. A combination of state statutes and city ordinances such as assault and battery, trespass, disorderly conduct, obstruction, nuisance are all still in full force and effect. So this proposed revision is just, in the city's, in my mindset, an easy way to avoid a facial constitutional challenge while still preserving the city's enforcement power. And if the city wanted to enact a panhandling ordinance in the future, I would advise let this litigation play out nationwide and maybe address this in 2019 when a national standard emerges from that litigation, and then we can track that language.
Okay, any questions of Mr. Latimer? Okay, seeing none, this is an opportunity for us to have a public hearing. This is the first public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this ordinance, now would be an opportunity to do so. If you wish to speak in favor.
Good evening. My name is Adam Turner, Ward 7. A few months back, I asked Chief because people didn't know what panhandling was. Now, if we go to this right here, we gonna create more problems for the police. Or we have con artists will try to take it and use it against where the law says. Well, that's gonna be a problem for the police. Then you have prostitution. They also use that as where the law says. Well, then we need to be careful because also we got this open weapon law. All right, people approach to wrong somebody, you might get shot. All right, we need to take all that under consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Anyone else wishing to speak about this ordinance? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak against? Okay, seeing none, I will close it as a public hearing. That'll be our first one. We will have a second public hearing at the next board meeting, at which point in time it will then become eligible for passage by the board. A 5-minute recess, please. It's now 7 o'clock, or 7:02, and we will be back in 5 minutes. So 7:02 and 5 is 7, 7:07. So.
Where are those people? Well, there's nothing on the south. That's here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is our 5 minutes. If you would please, everyone take your seat. I have a quorum and we're going to move forward. What I want to say to you guys, I hate the gavel, y'all. I hate the gavel. Please don't make me use it. And we're going to move into the discussion about annexation. And I want to be very clear that this was one of those things that I happen to think is important. I ran on it when I ran for election. This was one of the things I talked about. This is one of the things I think is significant to our future, our growth and development. I think it is important that we look toward the places that are growing. And in particular, we're looking east, most importantly, because that is where our growth pattern is. I think that annexation for us in this case allows us to take in portions that are having the opportunity to enjoy the urban environment without paying the ad valorem taxes associated with it. Now, yes, they pay a sales tax because they come and they eat in our restaurants, buy our fuel, buy whatever, but they still are not sharing in some of those ad valorem taxes. And I am particularly talking about the dense multifamily areas that are enjoying the revenues associated with their rentals and all the things that go on the east side of town. So from my perspective, that is where I am most interested in selecting areas that are appropriate to bring into the city. That also includes the areas that are along 182, which includes areas that are enjoying being in an urban environment without sharing in the costs of being in an urban environment. Now, one of the things that was said in here is what do we get? To me, you get the finest police force in the state. You get the finest fire department in the state. You get city administration. You get streets. Some of them aren't necessarily all going to be asphalt. Some of them may be chip seal, but we were working to make that happen. You get an opportunity for sanitary sewer. You get an opportunity. Water is your water association, which you already have one of. Although I must say, Bluefield Water Association, West Point Road Water Association, both have chosen to come into the city because we offer a fine product and we offer them a service, and we are moving forward in a very progressive and proactive way for infrastructure and the things that are associated with our water system. So you will get that. Now, if you are not getting sewer right now, it may very well be that you have no need for it because you have a septic tank. We've had people who have not wanted to be on our sewer system because they still have a septic tank that's working well. Or there may be a big blank piece of land that hadn't got anything on it right now that doesn't need sewer and water. And if you decide you want to develop it, then we are ready to bring it to you. So I would not be willing to, 1998 annexation was an overreach. I'm here to tell you it was an overreach. I understand why they did it. They saw that bypass coming in, they saw the Highway 25 bypass coming in, and they thought that they would have growth and development out there, and so they chose to go that far out. It was not an appropriate, in my opinion, and this is clearly my opinion, y'all, it was not the right thing to do. It was an overreach. So from my perspective, I think this is a very conservative approach. We brought in Mr. Slaughter because he is an expert at this particular course of action, and he has been very helpful. Now, do I think perhaps we can cut this back? I believe that there is sentiment on the board to reduce it some. I think there are ag areas that would be appropriate for us to cut out because they are going to be agricultural. And we're not interested in agricultural areas. Now, at some point in the future, we are absolutely going to grow to the extent that I don't care if you're half a mile outside the city limits, at some point it's going to become more urban and it would be entirely appropriate to take it in. But there are areas right now that may not be. So this to me is one of the opportunities for us to talk about it. And yes, I do think that annexation is an important thing for us to be doing. I realize 1998 was the overreach. I don't think this board should be hamstrung by the 1998 board that clearly I think made more than they should have out of the bypass because it did not develop as they had anticipated it would. So that's going to be my brief statement here. If the rest of the board wants to make a statement, that would be fine. Mr. Slaughter is here to give us some more information on the annexation process and why it would be helpful.
May be recognized.
Vice Mayor.
Ms. Mayor, see from this agenda item that we are to consider 3 or 4 plans. I did not see a plan in my packet. Did I overlook something, or was it not placed in? And we knew in advance that we're going to have an expert as you described him. Why do we not have that for our consideration prior to our arrival tonight, for the board's consideration before we got here? If you know, with the plans were made that he's going to be here, why do we not have the plans before he got here in our packet? That's my question to the mayor.
Okay, are you yielding the floor to me?
I'm not yielding, but I'm yielding for you to answer that question.
Well, because the plan was to have this board determine what those plans would be. And it was to have us take a look at opportunities and options for us and develop it as we go along. That's what Mr. Slaughter was here to do, and he's got several different things that he may or may not be able to provide us with that will help in the decision-making process. So it was not set in stone. It was an opportunity to flesh it out.
One last thing I want to say at this moment, then I'm going to yield the floor. It just seems to me, from my extensive governmental, administrative, and legal background, that if we're going to consider something of this magnitude, something of this multitude, that it would have just been clearly feasible, prudent, and conservative for this information to have been placed in the packet of each of the aldermen to consider prior to this session. So since it wasn't, you know, I'm very interested in hearing what he has to say, and since it wasn't in the packet, then certainly this board should not, and hopefully not, take any action tonight as to what action, if any, that it may take. Now, the mayor makes the comments at the onset here about what's conservative, what's prudent, what's reasonable, what's viable. We have not seen anything. I mean, where's the evidence? How do you know it's feasible? How do you know it's conservative? How do you know it's viable? Let's get the evidence before we start issuing an opinion from the bench. That's the training that I have. You don't make a ruling on the case without the evidence. Now we talk about there are a lot of factors to consider. We talk about the 1998 annexation. I want this here, the evidence. Then the 1998 annexation will be something that we need to further talk about, because I was there, I have the background and history to talk about it. So I want to hear the evidence, if any, there's to consider. And, and just because there's a plan does not mean that we have to adopt that plan. And one of the things that we need to talk about tonight, if there is a plan, the city's past performance. That is one of the elements that has to be considered. And I'm going to say this, I'm going to yield the floor at this time, but the city has a poor past performance. The 1998 annexation is still not complete. There are residents in Ward 6 that still have not received the services. 20 years. Very viable questions from these very important taxpayers. They cannot be ignored. They shall not be ignored. They must not be ignored. Why should we be annexed? Great questions. If I were in their situation, I would ask the same question: why annex me? The 1998 annexation, people still are on rock roads. The then mayor that has long gone on told those people, yes, we are going to provide these services within 5 years. But when you read the resolution, it says if it is economically or reasonably feasible. The fine print, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be in a hurry. There's no reason to be in a hurry for this train to leave the station. I've been through these annexations. Slow this train down if it has to come to a complete stop. There's no need to rush. Like the gentleman came up here, this hard-working taxpayer. He had to work for a living. His hard-earned money. He moved to where he is located because he did not want to be in the city. If he had wanted to be in the city, he would have moved into the city in the first place. Now the city is trying to grab him in. We have to be mindful that we are servants. We have to do what the people want us to do. This is their city. This is their property. This is their land. This is our goal. This is our jobs. We must be reminded that we work for them. I have heard these annexation discussions over and over and over. It brings about tax increases. Where is the money going to come from? The city has a poor past performance. Why is there a rush? Does the city has the financial ability? Yes, with raising taxes. Like the attorney said, you talk about $10 here, $10 there, but that is misleading. This money keeps adding on up. So let's hear the case. There's no need to rush this decision tonight because a lot of this property that came in 1998 is located in Ward 6, and there's some places that do not have sewer services as of October 2, 2018. And what's the hurt? It's all about zoning regulations, about revenue, how we can get bigger and get more money, how we can control. Taxes are steady going up. More governmental regulations, government getting bigger. We've gone over the last term, we started about 20 mills of taxes. We're at 26.63 mills. Just keeps going up. It's going up like water is flowing down the road like a mighty stream. So let's hear from these people. Got a conservative, and if the plans were, we need to have due diligence. If we're going to consider this tonight, we should have had the plans in our packet. That is the purpose of these board packets. We want to spring these things on us tonight at 7:20 for us to consider the future of Starkville, Mississippi. These taxpayers deserve due process. They deserve to be heard. They deserve to be treated fair. They deserve to be treated right. If they do not want to come to the city, they should not come into the city. It's just simple as that. If nobody else speak up for them, I'm going to speak up for them. If I own property and I bought it in the county, I don't want to be in the city. I don't want to come in because you want to tax me. You want to control my land. You want to tell me what I can build and what I cannot build. And that's what government should not be about that. Well, there are people who came in 1998 who wish they could get out of the city. Talking about some roads. I remember back in 1998 annexation, they put some chip seal and the stuff when the first application went there, before this engineer came in, it just went away like quicksand. You walk the road, you just sink away, sink away, sink away. They had to go out there and keep spending money, throwing money away. I said all that to say this is an important subject matter. We've heard from these citizens. I had one citizen who came up, said 100+ signatures that he's gathered. They don't want it. We've heard from various aspects of the community. I've gotten calls from people throughout this city who do not want this annexation. So I'm wanting to hear what they got, but even if there's a plan, what's the purpose of it? And it was so important, we should have had it in the board packet. Ridiculous, a shame. Want us to consider a plan, we don't even have it. I don't go to court unprepared. You gonna give me the material when I walk in the courtroom? Judge, run me out. When he says what says the plaintiff, what says the defendant, you got to say you read it. Don't even have the plan on the agenda to consider the plan of approval. They can consider something, had time to study it. Don't know what it is. Wants to sit here tonight and consider something that we have not seen. We can do better than that. We talk about Mississippi State University. We need to lead by example. Don't insult my intelligence to ask me something to consider something. It's not even in the packet to consider. What's the hurry tonight? If you don't have it tonight, bring it to another meeting. No need to consider something I hadn't seen it. And we're a very intelligent group. If we're going to consider it, we need to see it, just like we do all these other materials. The reason we have all this whole packet is so we can study it before we get here. Did I see anything about the annexation? Not in my packet. Why was it left out if it's so conservative, it's so important to consider? I'm just speaking for the people. This is important to the people, and the people have a right to be heard. That is the basic and the fundamental principle of our system of democracy. So hopefully this is our last meeting when something is brought out here like this. 4 plans, 3 or 4 plans, we're going to consider and decide here tonight and decide how this city is going to move forward for the next 100 years. And we don't have a plan. Other than what Mr. Information Director has put on the screen based on what's been given to him. Ridiculous. Maybe comments come behind me, but my views don't change. You can say whatever you want to say. If the people do not want to come in, leave them out. Very valid question to me. What benefit is it to me? Why are you going to bring me in? The lawyer said he does not want to be in. Others say they don't want to be in. So let's bring this matter to a halt and move on to the next issue. What's the purpose behind it other than want to generate revenue and impose governmental regulations and control growth? That's what they did in 1998. The majority did. So hopefully we'll hear something, and we'll see what happens. But I'm believe in protecting the rights of families. I believe in protecting the right of the property owners. Property values are important to me, and family values are important to me. And that's what I've heard from the people. We need to consider all the evidence, consider all the facts, and make the best informed decision. But this board has been hampered, in my opinion, in being prepared, because I have not seen anything to prepare for in our packet. So with that being said, of course, before I yield, that was very important to say. Some may disagree with me, but to the Vice Mayor, that's important. Mayor, I yield.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Well, let me help a little bit here. One of the things that I was hoping we would do is to discuss areas that we might comfortably move away from. And just so everyone's clear, this has been on our website ever since we got it. This was the municipal annexation presentation, which discusses the areas and the revenues associated with them and the costs associated with them and the things that would be needed to be provided. So this has been out there for, several months, I guess. When was it presented? August 21st. So it's been out there for a couple of months, and it has been available on our website. It talks about population, it talks about sales tax, it talks about ad valorem tax, and it shows the various demographic elements of doing an annexation. And what I was hoping we might do tonight is have somewhat of an opportunity to discuss among ourselves the changes that we might want to make to it and reach perhaps a consensus on how we can go forward and help Mr. Slaughter go back and provide something that we can come forward with and move in a new direction that everyone can reach a consensus about. And so that was the hope, is it would be a work session. So from my perspective, the board has had all of this information. This annexation presentation has been available, so I'm hoping that we will have given enough thought to it to see how far we're willing to go as a group. So that was sort of the goal. Any other discussion at this point before we ask Mr. Alderman Carter?
I'm going to tell some of y'all here that typically what I do is I try to take calls from all sides, and then what I do is I basically take notes. So this may be a long-winded, but I feel like when you're at the house reading or doing a study at the house, it's best to write there and then come in, and so you don't miss a point. So these are going to be some things. Some of these I've already heard tonight from different angles, but I'm going to repeat everything I wrote because I think it's there's a purpose driven. So I first off state for the media that probably over 90 to 95% of calls that I've had and letters through personal phone, city phone, and all the letters we've gotten have been against the annexation. So anytime you talk about annexation, it can become a heated conversation. And the question must always be asked simply why, or better yet, what's causing this necessity? And it simply isn't a public need at this point. In fact, the public is against this motion tonight. It's been said that there were over 100 years of developable land within the city limits on the bypass. You see this now. We are a city that has an extraordinary opportunity to have more land than we'll ever develop in anybody's lifetime here, already accessible. Most of the time, annexations are driven in the United States when there's a need to get ahead of the curve of growth. I think we've got that. I'll get into that later. I think that we've got the opportunity now. We've got land to develop. So that's not the driving factor in my opinion. The few parcels that have been developed around the university and the Highway 12 extended, we talked about one tonight. That's the Land Bank, La Quinta, Hilton, Neighborhood Walmart, Haven 12. These are just a few parcels, and they've taken over, in my opinion, 10 to 15 years to develop. And that's just, if you look on a Google Earth, that is a very small portion of land. So that being said, I do really think it would take hundreds of years to develop the bypass. The argument that the apartment complexes are enjoy city services without paying taxes is an unjustifiable argument. By our own admission, those units weren't built up to our standards, and I'm not certain that I want buildings up that are not up to code within the city. I've read many articles in the paper of having infrastructure issues, and the supervisors are having major issues and what to do. I personally got a couple of friends on the board of supervisors, and those are problem areas. I'm not sure that I want that. Typically, annexation is ahead of the growth, as was the case in 1998 and 1999, but this annexation is overwhelmingly multifamily units and not single-family residential. Mr. Slaughter, I appreciate you coming and getting in the middle of this conversation as a community, but he often said that most annexations are exactly opposite of what we see. Typically, you see overwhelmingly single-family residential. This is mostly multifamily. This is high density. This is big block apartments. This is not what I think I want our town to look like. Multiple occasions I've tried to push moratoriums as an alderman, moratoriums just to stop build for a minute and let some of this apartment growth catch up. Haven't had a second yet. I'll continue to fight big block apartments. I don't like the way they look, personally. This whole discussion started with the idea of encompassing Mississippi State University within our city limits. And at that time, I was 50-50, probably leaning for the annexation for the fact that we are a town and gown university and town. And I think when Mississippi State University opted it out, that should have been a big red flag that this is dead in the water. I'm surprised that it still got pushed as hard as it did. At that point, when all the white areas on the eastern side, which is Mississippi State University, when they opted out, then there was a lot added to it that typically when I started seeing the cattle farmers call me, big blocks of land, areas that have been second, third, fourth, fifth generation cattle farmers that said, we're not going to develop. It's always going to be a cattle farm. I don't want my taxes going up. I think there was a gentleman here that might have asked why, I didn't want to answer you earlier, but why I think this was and I'll tell you my opinion. I think why this was started in the first place is, what would you get? You would get the benefit of a city, not only like the mayor said, the police and fire protection. I'll talk on that later as well, but this was probably designed, I think your intention and purpose may be from a retail strategy standpoint to try to get over that 30, I've often heard the 30,000 threshold, because what you do is, I believe we're around 24, 25,000, but when you get over a town of, every incremental growth of say every 10,000, it is more attractive to a retail strategy side. So you got better chances of getting the Olive Gardens and the Red Lobsters and things we all want to come here. So I think to the side of the proponents of the annexation, that's probably one of the things that you would do with an annexation is to get more curb appeal type things as a community. So, but I do want to go back to when Mississippi State opted out. That was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me personally. If we are a town and gown community, it was kind of like if they don't want it, why are we still pressing so hard? What will you get from this? Just like the 1998 annexation, these county residents will see their taxes probably double or triple. I've run about 5 case studies of family members and friends, and I see no benefit for many, many years to come. We still do have some areas out there from 1999 that are still not completed, as Vice Mayor Perkins says. Besides, I've received a majority of calls against the annexation from county residents. They choose to live where they live for a particular reason. And I think it's a hard sell to try to sell a county resident the fact that they want a city life. Our extraordinary growth in sales tax and incremental growth in the student body population at Mississippi State University are good target growths. What we've had as a community, people all over this state and country would love to have as a community. There's no fighting the fact that we're growing. I think we're infilling. We've had a lot of things from T5 changes within the downtown area. I think that you're starting to see you're seeing it tonight on several occasions. There's infill, and that's good. That's a good thing. I don't think it's time to grab all this at this time. Let's just concentrate on I would say the best I can come up with is nearly 1,000 or plus acres out on the bypass that are developable. I'm going to say hundreds, if not thousands, of underdeveloped acres already that we have within the city limits. I have staffing issues with the police and fire department in Pafford. I think this is all coming within 60 days of Pafford starting their contract. You saw that tonight. So encompassing, we've got a lot of fresh contracts with Pafford is a great example just from an ambulatory care service is, what are they going to do from a staffing? What are we going to do? We got to talk about fire protection. We got to talk about police response times. We got to talk about chief that's always never has enough, and he doesn't. He doesn't have enough officers, and firemen don't have enough firemen, and so there's going to be staffing issues. Going to take several years to figure out a solution. And then lastly, I think Mr. Taylor said this, and it's a good point. It's census driven. That's 2020 coming up. I'd be fine revisiting this in 2021, 2022 if I'm still up here. I just think that the timing's just off. I don't understand why here, why tonight, and don't be deceived. I wanted to finish on this. Don't be deceived, and I think everybody on the board knows this. If this passes tonight, the ball is rolling, and it's not going to be stopped. I would bet a paycheck on it that. So don't think that. I think that's why it was so important when we started this conversation on whether or not you could speak. Because once I speak, and once everybody on the board gives their professional opinion, then you would want to have a chance. I would want to have a chance to rebuttal some of the things I heard, and I know you do. So I was just going to fair warn. I've noticed now in 9 years that if it gets to this point, I'm not saying the votes are there, but if it passes tonight, I would bet that the annexation is going to pass in some form or fashion. So I'll still vote against it, but don't be deceived that I don't think your public comments in the next 2 public hearings are going to really weigh a lot of bearing, because obviously if you're coming from the county, then you're against it. So back to, just want to let the media know for record that probably over 95% of the individuals or more, probably 98% of the individuals that have either contacted me through a personal phone, city phone, or work email have been against this annexation. I just think that once Mississippi State opted out of it, that could have been our big red flag, is if we are truly elected, and even though you didn't elect us, that you're still citizens of our community and the people we work with, and there's no differentiation between somebody living in the county still not wanting to be in the city. I think Vice Mayor Perkins made excellent arguments about you chose to live there for a reason. My brother is at the very, very, very southeast corner of Octok and Poorhouse, and he was asking the other day, he's a young married guy with young kids, and he's, hey, am I ever gonna get services out here? I said, man, I can't promise you that. I can't sit there. If history repeats itself, if we're gonna add 25 years to, or let's say 20 years to today's date, I can't promise that he's gonna have sewer, and for him to pay taxes for that long, it just is what it is. It's such a large and competent annexation that I just be honest with you, I don't think you're gonna have sewer in 15 years. So with that, I yield the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak at this point? No? All right. Mr. Slaughter?
Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Just
Oh, no.
have you recognized. Thank you.
Sure.
Just to be clear, was your game plan, I think the comments from both the Vice Mayor and Alderman Carver are incredibly important. But I wanted to ask you, did you kind of go into this agenda item with wanting to hear from Mr. Slaughter and then perhaps some more discussion as we follow after Mr. Slaughter? When is it appropriate to make comments? That's what I'm asking.
Well, now it's fine, but what I was hoping to do is allow Mr. Slaughter to come give us another brief overview, and then see if there's an area that, for those assuming or not assuming, we'll find out here pretty quickly if people are still willing to look at some measure of this annexation plan, whether we cut from, I don't know, Octok Road down, or Blackjack Road down, or Poorhouse Road down, whatever it is. But I was hoping that we would have that opportunity to kind of go through what works for us and what doesn't.
Okay.
So, Mr. Carver, I'm sorry, you weren't done.
That's fine.
I apologize.
That's fine. I think I'd like for Mr. Slaughter to, of course, after Alderman Carver, but come up, we'll discuss it, cut it up, and see where we're at, perhaps where we're headed, and then allow for some further discussion, maybe some more comments, because I think especially some of the things that the Vice Mayor said and Alderman Carver, are very important to talk about. I'm sure many other items as well, so I'll yield the floor.
Absolutely. Alderman Carver, I'm sorry.
So, from a housekeeping standpoint, I wouldn't do that. What I would do is just go ahead. I'm going to call the question, and we're going to go ahead and do a vote, because at the same point, I do want to let the public talk, and then let's craft some type of a boundary. So they know their land better than we do, but as far as sitting here tonight and starting to cut out certain roads and certain parcels, and I just don't know what's the benefit of that, because I haven't spoken yet. So I would like to call the question and see if the vote's there, because I don't want to sit here and work.
There's no motion, Alderman Carver, on which to call a question.
So, dead in the water?
No. Well, no. I'm going to ask Mr. Slaughter to come.
Well, I want to make some kind of motion that we just table this.
If you would like to make a motion, go right ahead.
We can take, or something just to, I do want to see how the board feels. I'd like to have a roll call vote, but something that's adequate. City Attorney, if you can draft a motion that says whether even in favor of,
Further discussion?
just discuss it, or?
Are you seeking a motion to deny the subject matter altogether? Or are you seeking a
That's
motion
what you
to
think is
table
the
the
best.
subject matter?
I think you know my intentions through our conversations. If you think that'd be the best motion, just to deny annexation.
Yeah, that's my point. I want to make sure you're talking about denial rather than tabling or delay.
Denial.
So is that the motion? You wish to make a motion to deny the
I haven't
annexation?
seen it written yet. I'd like to see.
Oh, okay.
Let
Yes,
me draft something up real quick.
Yeah, take your time. And I would like the gentleman to ask some questions. Whoever on this board is in favor of this, answering some of that, like, what do they get for this in the first decade? They ask some legitimate questions, and I can't sit up there and answer your question. I didn't catch your name. I forgot your name. But I think you had a question that deserves an answer, and I don't know if that's something that, it was kind of an open-ended something.
Okay.
If you want to answer the gentleman's question.
Well, I thought I had, Mr. Carver. Hang on just a second. When I said police and fire, those are the things that I believe that you get. But we've got more people up here to discuss. Alderman Miller, I see your hand.
Yes, I'll go ahead and, to Alderman Carver's question, I'll go ahead and speak while we're waiting for the motion. That way we can just make it clear where folks stand, certainly not pushing for anybody else to speak. And I think Alderman Carver's right in that it's important that folks know where we stand and what we think about the annexation. I think the Vice Mayor did a great job, and I think expressing the gravity of annexation and how important it is. From my previously being on the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Starkville, also representing Ward 5, I'm fully aware of the pressure, anxiety, whatever you want to call it, when people discuss messing with your property. When you come up here, and I know some of you might very well be even already be aggravated. I certainly understand that, and I respect that because I own property, and I think I'd feel the same way. You always feel that way when there's an unknown. So I think that's a very, very valid concern. I'm certainly in no rush for annexation. I don't know that that we have to move forward tonight. I'm certainly interested to see what the gravity of the board, or what the feeling of the board is. That's why I wanted to hear from Mr. Slaughter and just see where we wound up tonight more, even just have a conversation. And of course, the will of the board, if we decide not to move forward, then we decide not to move forward. I think there are, when looking at the map and the plan provided by Mr. Slaughter, I think that it was very well put together. I certainly understand the mayor's intent of pushing this agenda item forward, but I found that there were three major points that we were discussing with this annexation. The first was going to be revenue, the second was going to be control, and the third was going to be population. Looking at the population, as Alderman Carver discussed. In terms of revenue, that was the first thing that popped out to me when we got when we received the study from Mr. Slaughter. In my opinion, in looking at the revenue that we would gain as it stands now, that as a city, we would come out flat. I don't really see any gain from a revenue perspective as it stands now. I would be concerned about providing, and I've said this from the beginning since we started talking about annexation, is that I would be concerned about providing basic city services. Providing basic city services is you heard me at the beginning of the meeting compliment our department heads. I think they do a great job, but it is certainly an area that we continue to grow in providing basic city services. I want to be the best in the state of Mississippi at providing basic city services. I think a lot of times cities throughout the state of Mississippi, in the line of work that I do, get ahead of themselves and they look at the bigger picture before providing basic city services. And that is incredibly, incredibly important. So from a revenue standpoint, I have a real concern as we look at annexation, the way that it stands now, that we would not be able to provide basic city services from a revenue standpoint. So that is a major concern of mine. Control. I think that I understand the argument for control, certainly as the university grows, but also the city of Starkville continues to grow within our current limits. Being able to control the surrounding areas and the way that we grow is very important and is a very valid argument. However, I feel that some of the areas that we are looking at, specifically Blackjack Road, the Oktok area, I would agree with Alderman Carver that those are predominantly multifamily homes that have already been built to the standards of the county and would ultimately be a problem for the city of Starkville. And they are not a problem that I would like to inherit. In other words, I don't know what we're controlling if it's already been developed. So those are two major areas of concern for me. I've expressed those. I think I've been pretty clear about those 2 areas. The last is going to be population. I certainly understand the argument for being able to grab some population. Alderman Carver also spoke on this. He talked about getting that extra 10,000. I have thought a lot about annexation, a lot, especially in the past month. So I don't want you to think I haven't been thinking about you. I have gone to sleep thinking about annexation, and if the mayor's done anything, she's been keeping me up at night, for sure. But in terms of population, I heard that argument and I thought, that's a good argument. I want the retail. I want the amenities that Alderman Carver talked about when we go out and grab population. However, for me, as I've thought about this, part of grabbing population was part of grabbing Mississippi State, the ability to grab Mississippi State University. It was if we were able to do it, that's an easy grab for population. And something that would be beneficial to the city of Starkville and beneficial to the surrounding areas near Starkville. However, it appears we have not accomplished that. So looking at the additional population that I know we could grab with areas like Blackjack Road and Octok, which has made it difficult for me to come to a decision on this, I feel as though population is certainly part of the formula for getting retail and industry to Starkville. And weighing that in my decision, though, I don't think that it is the ultimate weight in my decision, if that makes sense, because if we're talking about our rival, literally Oxford and the University of Mississippi, they're providing a lot of amenities and are having a lot of development with less population than us. Now, certainly there are other factors that come into play when I make that statement, and I'm very aware of that, how their county is shaped demographically, and what the city of Oxford and their county looks like. However, I don't feel as though not having that population is going to kill us. We are growing like crazy in Starkville, regardless, as Alderman Carver discussed. Now, with all that being said, in my discussions, I am for what I think is a considerably more condensed version of annexation. I am for a version of it. I am not for the current version as it stands. In our conversations and recent meetings, I think that it's important that we control our entrances. We've talked about that. I think the area around 182, is that defined as a particular area? What area is that?
It's in Area 3. Joel, can you blow that up a little bit? There you go. Now, yeah, that area, and pull it down just to, yeah.
Okay.
The area around 182 there, Alderman Miller?
Yes. Yeah. I think in accomplishing our goals for annexation and considering what the goals of the mayor are and what they've been for other members of the board, I think a much more conservative movement, that is a more reasonable, that 182 area, including Highway 12, which is an area that I want to discuss a little bit more as we move forward with this. I can come to a conclusion in that area and a version of it in the 182 area. To me, that is a much easier grab than some of the concerns that we see with Blackjack Road, Octok, and the areas for the folks near Poorhouse Road. Now, in my comments, we talked about revenue. One of the concerns for me is I don't want to spend less on citizens, meaning I don't want us to be stretched too thin in the way that we grow. I'm more focused on wanting to get it right the way that we do it in the city of Starkville now, and wanting to spend more on the current citizens of the city of Starkville. I think as we grow, you see across cities across the state, as they grow, that there is less per capita spending within municipalities, and that is a real concern for me. I'd like for us to see us spend more on individual citizens. So Alderman Carver, to answer your question, I figured it was important to just come out and talk about where we stand, what we think. I'm certainly to the point, the 182 area, I'm very willing to have a discussion. I think there are certain factors that make sense over there. But when Mr. Slaughter made the comment about the multifamily versus single family and made the statement, and he might have different thoughts once he speaks, but it was indicated to me that really throughout the entire study there was an imbalance there, and it wasn't something that you normally wanted to see in an annexation. That's what I'm saying. But there was an imbalance there, is what you said. You might like to see more of a balance there, perhaps, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong when you speak. But it is regardless. Before you even said that, it was a concern for me. So I'll let it stand. That's where I'm at currently.
All right. Thank you, Alderman.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I need to read the motion, Mayor, procedurally, if that's okay.
Yes, go right ahead.
Based on comments from Alderman Carver at the table and outside just now, his motion is as follows. Move to close discussion and deny consideration of a proposed annexation plan and ordinance for the city of Starkville, Mississippi until after the 2020 census.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Alderman Vaughn. Second from Alderman Vaughn. All right. Now, discussion. Alderman Walker.
Mayor, I'll be brief. There's already been lots of discussion and people giving their points of view, and which I think is certainly fair. That's what everybody has the opportunity to do up here. I think it's probably not very helpful to phrase any annexation or anything we do as conservative or progressive. I just don't think that's very helpful. I don't know that this is either. So I don't think that's helpful to talk about it that way. We've had this packet for 6 weeks or thereabouts, and when Mr. Slaughter gave us the presentation, I agree with Alderman Miller. I looked at, there was revenue, population, and the expense, and chewed on it for the last 6 weeks about where do we think we would go. And I agree. I don't think the wholesale plan as presented is probably something that we need to do at the moment. It would be hard to sell me on that. In fact, I would be maybe more inclined to think about de-annexation of some areas, especially to the west. I think that might actually be more prudent, and maybe something that we should absolutely consider. And those people that complain about basic city services, last time I checked, the garbage truck comes by my house twice a week. If I have a call from the PD, they're going to show up. If there's a fire, the fire truck shows up. If you got a water leak, we get it fixed. If you got a sewer problem, we get it fixed. That's just part of dealing with aging infrastructure. So we're providing services to the citizens that they pay for, and I think we'd continue to do that. Having said that, I agree that some of the areas to the west, not interested. The area to the north, the one guy who's come to us and complained over and over that I thought I was in the city and I'm not, I'm fine with leaving him out of this annexation study. He does, I'm okay with that. The areas to the east and Blackjack, I think it makes a lot of sense personally to grab those apartment complexes. I think it does, and here's the reason why. We can say they aren't built to our code. They're built to a national building code. They're just not going to have sprinklers and so forth. And we can kid ourselves and think that that's not already in our doorstep, the issues that are having there. They are. We're going to see lots of those, but I'm okay. I'm okay if we don't get that. Some things that I hope that we could potentially come to some agreement on is that when we're talking about revenue, one of the things that Mr. Slaughter presented was really about the sales tax. I believe the figure was somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000 of sales tax, $200,000 of sales tax, something like that. There's no question some of that probably comes on the west side, but I don't think there's any doubt that the majority of that sales tax comes from that 182 corridor. where you have the Ford dealership, you have a hotel, you have other restaurants and businesses. I believe when most people drive into our community and when they leave our community, they think that they're in the city limits right there. So I think that is something that absolutely, we talk about the control and thinking about the entrances out at that interchange, absolutely connecting the rest of the bypass that at some point is likely to develop and into what is currently the MSU Research Park. I believe that corridor, I would like to think that at some point we might could come to some consensus. First, the majority of that is all roads that are owned and maintained by the state of Mississippi, meaning we're not having to repave or keep up those roads. It's going to be very limited in terms of sewer or water that we have to provide. The distance that our fire or our police would have to go would be minimal. And what you're really getting of all that is you're getting sales tax. And let's be clear, we have been growing really well in our community, but what's driving that is Mississippi State University and athletics at Mississippi State University. And I'd say right now it's maybe a really good thing that the state legislature is going to consider or is going to be giving us some of that internet sales tax that we're going to lose because we're going to need to make up a gap. If we want to spend more on our citizens, we either have to pay it, get it from you in sales tax or ad valorem tax so we can give that back to you. The money's got to come from somewhere. And that Ford dealership out there that sells a bunch of cars, I think is a pretty low-hanging fruit opportunity for us to grab a little bit of that sales tax without having to put a big burden on our citizens to be able to do that. I agree with Alderman Carter. I've had calls from people, mostly not saying they've been outright against it, but mostly people that have questions. And I'm glad that people are showing up here tonight to hopefully try to get some questions answered and to learn more. Because that's really what this is all about. I think it is open, it is transparent. I think there's some tweaks in there that we need to look at. I think there is a lot of that area south of Oktok that is absolutely rural, and it's probably going to be a really long time before we would see the character of that change to be something that is going to be, that you would say is city-like. So I agree. I don't think that's probably in our best interest to look. What I was hoping that we were going to get tonight was trying to figure out where everybody is a little bit, and hearing this and being able to say, okay, here's what we presented. Now we might be able to carve out some pieces. Can you go back and give us some numbers and tell us what that would look like if we did that? I'm certainly not ready to make a decision tonight on let's do it, let's don't do it. I don't think that's doing our due diligence. I think our due diligence is looking at the options and saying, okay, go tell us we think this might be of interest, show us the numbers, and then if it doesn't make sense, then we'll have some public hearings and then we'll make a decision. Getting ahead of the census has been the thinking all along. You don't do an annexation after you get the census, then you have to wait another 10 years for that to work. So if you're going to count the population, you try to get it before the 2020 census so the numbers actually help you. We are not Lafayette County. We're not Oxford, and we're not Lafayette County. The socio-demographics of our county is comparing apples to oranges. That's the reason we're attempting industrial growth. That's the reason we are raising taxes, to be able to pay for things like that, to try our best to lift up everybody that lives in this county, to give them more opportunities to be able to have a good paying job with a high quality of life in places that we can go. This annexation is going to be, people are going to be against it, people are going to be for it. I was just hoping that we would have a conversation about what makes sense. And I'll tell you, for me, what makes sense of things that I would at least consider. I'm at least considering from the pink to the upper north part where the existing bypass of Highway 12 extended, that we're already seeing. You said the last 10 years, but go back the last 5 and how much development. You've seen the Aspen, you've seen other renovations, you're seeing a major development that's going to be, that got approved tonight, that we sold that property. You've seen a Walmart neighborhood center. To think that that piece of that bypass from our Highway 12 between the bypasses isn't going to develop sooner rather than later is just not, well, that's going to happen. The reason we haven't seen the things on the west develop, there's a lot of issues. Access is a major problem. Soils out there are a major problem. Yes, we have land to be able to develop over the next 200 years, but it ain't coming. It's not going to come out there for lots of varying environmental and other access issues. To the east, we have more opportunity. So from that interchange at Highway 12 to the 182 and the corridor, and however far down we feel comfortable to go, I believe that that area is at least worthy of consideration. Whether we get there or not, I'm okay with that, but I believe that's at least worthy of consideration. From 182 south, as far down as we want to at least have a conversation. Once you get below, what's the community right there, where you see the big blue block? From about there down, I'm absolutely think that we can move on. The rest, I think, is at least worth us making a consideration, finding out what those numbers show. With that, Mayor, I'll yield.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Sister.
And we've had some very eloquent speeches tonight, and clearly there's been a lot of thought put into this, and we have had this information available to us for some time to think about. I'd like to address just a handful of points, and I'm not going to be as eloquent nor as lengthy in my comments, but one of the things that's important to me is I have sat through discussions and trying to figure out how we retrofit things. It is very difficult once something is built to retrofit it and to bring it to where you want it to be. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about, if it's streets, if it's sidewalks, if it's whatever, it is difficult to retrofit. So I would like for us to look at where those growth areas are occurring and to get in front of that development so that we can make sure it's developing in a way. I've heard the term harmonious development, I think, a couple of times tonight, and I think we need to look at that. I've heard that we have plenty of property to develop over the next 200 years. And that's true. There is plenty of properties west and north. But as Alderman Walker has pointed out, that is not where the demand is. And so it doesn't matter that we have property development over there. We hear all the time from a constituent that we'd like to have more things develop in a particular area. We cannot force businesses to locate in a particular part of town. If they make a business decision that they want to be in an area, they're going to make that decision and they're going to be there. I think that those things, along with our ability to manage an annexation project, very much puts us in the areas that Alderman Walker and Alderman Miller have talked about. The northeast area there along 182 back down through Highway 12. I'd come as far south as Blackjack and be supportive of that. I don't know that we have a reason to go further below there. There may be some reason for those people who live in the very southern part of town for us to go down and look at property up to Poorhouse Road. That's an area where there's a development underway, and they are building with the expectation that they will, if not this time, at some point be annexed into the city. And that is just part of the life of a city. We grow, we expand, or we're dying. And I'd much prefer to think that Starkville is a city that's growing and that we grow in a smart way. Two other things I'd like to talk about. One is Oxford and the amenities that they have in Oxford. And Alderman Walker's absolutely right. The socioeconomic demographics are completely different in those two areas. Better, worse, they're just different. On the other hand, the community of Oxford has chosen to make a much bigger investment in their community than the city of Starkville is. Their local city taxes, despite the fact that their tax base is higher to begin with, is 25% higher than the city of Starkville. So they have chosen to invest in their community, and as a result, you see that play out in the amenities and the things that they have available in that town. The other thing, and the last thing I'd like to mention, and I'm not going to change anybody's mind about anything, I know, but the 1998 annexation, absolutely an overreach in terms of what they were doing. And I understand, and I believe that the bypass did drive that particular annexation. But we have struggled to catch up with that since that annexation. I may be wrong, but I think we are down to 6 roads, 5 of which are recently deeded to the city. We couldn't have paved them if we wanted to. But I think we're down to those, and had the bids come in at an amount that was satisfactory, we would be beginning construction or beginning the process of chip sealing those roads. We're going to rebid that in the spring, and hopefully we get that addressed now. Sewer services, we have addressed the last two areas, or are in the process of addressing the last two areas that I'm aware of in terms of providing those services. It took us far too long to provide those services. But that's because when they were annexing, they were not looking at what their needs were. They were hoping to capture growth that is years and years, decades into the future. So I think when we look at this, we do need to look at this in a smart way. We need to look at where there is some impetus to grow, and that's going to be east, possibly a little south, but primarily east. And now that we have a consolidated school district, there is no reason for people not to choose to develop east. In the past, I think that those separate school districts very much push development in a different area, but that's in the past. And so where do I stand on this? I'm absolutely in favor of getting some more information, looking at a discrete area, and coming back, having our 2 public hearings. Even if we draw some boundaries tonight, they could change over the process of those public hearings. So whatever we do tonight is not final in terms of an annexation process. And even if we vote tonight to deny any future annexation conversations until after the census, it's going to happen. At some point in the future, it's going to happen. And if you're truly concerned about wanting to live outside a city, outside the city of Starkville, you need to be planning too, because it may not happen in your generation, but your son is going to see the city of Starkville annex again, and it's going to continue to grow, or we're going to be a dying community. And I would much rather be a community that is growing than one that is being held back because we're afraid to move forward.
Yield. Alderman Little, and I apologize, you were next in line, I apologize. So.
Well, thank you. First, I would like to say that I'm disappointed that some of my colleagues are trying to squelch conversation on this matter tonight before I get into where I am on annexation. I think this is a worthy conversation. I think it's good government that we talk about it. We may not all agree with whichever way we decide to go, if we go any direction with this tonight. Mr. Slaughter, we hired him to do a study. He's done the study. He's given us the documentation on more than one occasion. First, the demographic breakdown, I believe, then the study. This is the study area. He gave us all the statistics, and I think the mayor was doing well in not trying to shove something down our throats tonight, but more so to flesh out where we stand on this. And I think that's what we're getting now. So the motion in second's moot in my mind. As to annexation, I don't take it lightly. I've listened to a lot of people. I've visited with a lot of folks. I have driven around the entire area. I got lost in some of the areas up in University Hills and so forth. I don't think we need to go any further west. I think the only growth we've had out there in the last 12 years is the Link Apartments. I think we've already seen going to the west is not justifiable. Going to the north and getting the gentleman up that way is not justifiable. Riding through Oktok, that's rural in my mind. That's country living. I don't know, there's probably been a few houses built in the last 20 years, but it probably looks like it did 20 years ago. We've got the big university apartments that have grown just adjacent footsteps, to the university. I get it. They're a big ad valorem generator. A year and a half ago, during the campaigns, I had an opportunity to spoke briefly at a forum, a candidate forum, and I mentioned annexation. with the intent of the low-hanging fruit, in my opinion, was Mississippi State. And I don't think those conversations with Mississippi State are dead right now. They're ongoing, and we don't know what may happen there. I mean, I look for them they could stay autonomous. We get to count their head count, which is going to be a big thing going forward with this new recent legislation that was passed down in Jackson a few weeks ago. It's going to be based on your proportion of population, how much of the internet sales tax we get. So that's big. They maintain all their roads. It really wouldn't cost us anything. So that's, to me, I'm still scratching my head on, but that's not necessarily dead in the water at this point. So it also made sense for us to go along the 182 corridor. The Ford dealerships out there, all that sales tax goes straight to the state. We get none of it. 5% on every vehicle and truck, every car and truck that's sold out there goes straight to the state. We get nothing from that. There's a hotel out there. They got the Shell station. I don't see why we wouldn't just go right down that highway and connect back around, keeping in mind Mr. Walford's property, and we could work with that. That's low-hanging fruit. The state's going to pay upkeep the highways. It don't cost us anything. Going south, there's a big tracts of land right there. Starkville's growing south residentially. So if you're within a half mile, it may not happen now. It may not happen 5 years from now. It may happen. It's going to happen. It's going to become part of the city, and that's just growth. And as Alderman Sistrunk said, if you're not growing, you're dying. But I think it's not showing much vision if you can't at least see the 182 corridor and 12 connection to get those businesses, and it's not going to cost us a nickel to maintain. I can't see going to get those apartments. We've got to be contiguous, and without the university, we're not going to be contiguous. You have to wrap around and get the University Hills and all that through there just to get the apartments. I'm just not there. So that's probably the very most conservative grab, if you call it a grab. It's not much of a grab. It's just going down. That's a gateway and corridor. I've thought about it many times. I come in from Columbus or anywhere coming from the north side of town or that direction. We don't even have any lights there at the interchange. I talked to Mike Taggart, and it's expensive, but if that becomes part of the city, we're going to light that entrance up. You're going to know you've arrived to Starkville. If you want to take the second exit, take the second exit. But you're going to know. That's something I just never could understand. But it's out in the county. So anyway, I've rambled a little bit, but that's kind of where I'm at. And how you?
Thank you, sir. All right, Alderman Vaughn and then Alderman Carver. Alderman Vaughn.
First of all, I thank all you homeowners for coming. And you talking about your mind. I pray 3 or 4 times a day about this. I've been doing it ever since I've been coming here. I mean, I'm constantly on my knees. And this is not Oxford, this is not Madison, this is not Ridgeville, this is Starkville. This is Starkville, where I've been for 65 years of my whole life. This is Starkville. I know we wanted to grow, but we can't let it grow like Oxford. We can't do what Ridgeville and Madison doing. We just got to find a better way to do it. And then you talking about annexing all these people. We got our own sewer problem in the city need fixing. This not part of 1998. We got our own drainage problem need fixing. That's not part of 1998. We got streets overlaid. You got some streets look bad right now. Be 4 or 5 years before we get to overlay them. What is these people? We annex them, man. Where's the revenue coming from to take care of all this? We got dilapidated pipes that are falling in the ground now. This is not part of 1998. This is the city problem that we got now that we are not even fixing. We hustling and scuffing trying to get money to fix this right here. How are we going to take care of them? We can't take care of our own. That's the whole thing I'm saying. And I've been asking that for the long. Where is the revenue coming from to annex somebody else in? That's my problem. It's going to be a law. It's going to be a tax increase if you do it. That's what bothers me. We can't fix what we got and talking about bringing somebody else in. That's my problem. I yield.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Carver.
Just, again, taking notes. I heard a couple times we'd be a dying community if we didn't annex, and I think that's invalid from the sake that even without these annexed areas, you see them growing and the community's growing, and matter of fact, I'm okay with retaining our current city limit and just infilling, which is what we want. We don't want a lot of sprawl. I mean, obviously, you come down Octok, I can't even envision coming very much further than the roundabout ever. I mean, for any reason. It's you know, the argument said it's bound to happen. It doesn't have to happen. Yeah, we are growing by leaps and bounds, and that's something that this board, I will say this, if anything as a board, let's commit, and we've started it. This board right here, I will give congratulatory remarks as far as the infrastructure strides that we've made and the capital improvement strides. Let's tuck our heads. When somebody comes up here in 3 more years and they say something that, you know, the 98 annex, you can say that's just an invalid argument. Let's get that discussion out of the way. The day that the 1999, 1998 annexation is not a focal point, let's talk then. But we can't talk now. I mean, obviously you see where I'm at, but this is a board that has made, the previous board and this board have made giant strides as far as going back and fixing things. I will say that. And I just don't want to take on too much more than we have. Our fire, I would say that our fire department would argue that they're stretched to a max. Our police department, I would say that they're stretched to a max. I don't think either one of y'all got extra personnel at the moment. You know, ambulance service is still out there. Saw tonight just on a 2-month. Not certain about the response times. Looks great, but they were obligated through their contract to have 90% of their calls under 10 minutes, or they lose a contract. That's a fact. And I know if this happens, I'm sure that'll come in and the city attorney adjust it, but it's a long stretch right now. And there's nothing wrong, and city government moves at a snail's pace. There's nothing wrong with sitting for 24 months, putting our head down, and attacking what we've already said we're going to attack in the rest of this term, which is capital improvements, infrastructure, getting these neighborhoods. I'm in Green Oaks. Crossgates, Ward 1 has major sewage issues. Let's start with that. There's nothing wrong with it at the end of this term saying, you know what, we're the ones that put the boots on the ground and got some stuff done like that. Let's spend our time doing that. When Mississippi State bowed out, let me tell you something, if they pass something right, I'm going to request that Mississippi State Legal Counsel comes up here. I've heard exactly opposite, that the conversations are dead in the water. I want general counsel up here, and let's have an open, transparent conversation. I want to have a conversation with them. I'm going to request that tonight if y'all pass something at the next meeting, because I heard the comment that the conversations are not over tonight, and I thought they were. So are y'all still having ongoing conversations with Mississippi State Legal Counsel about this?
I have not had any further legal
Well,
conversations.
who said the comment that?
I did.
Are you having conversations with them?
You?
Are you? I've heard the conversation's dead in the water and they want out of this. Is that true?
They are very supportive of annexation. Now, they are not necessarily ready to be annexed themselves from my conversations, but there have been other conversations. And, you know, I'm not privy to each and every one of them, so Alderman Little has had some conversations.
Would you mind doing that in an open setting so we can talk to them as a board? At least bring them to the next meeting. So I need to know that changes the whole situation if Mississippi State University is going to be included in this. I see a lot of white up there.
I don't think we asked MSU for a command performance.
Yeah.
Well, somebody on this board's having conversations, and I'd like to at least have a quorum. Sir?
You yield?
No, sir.
No, we have.
So that's all.
Alderman Carver has.
From an open and transparent standpoint, if either there are conversations and the mayor doesn't know about it, or there's not, and I'd like to be involved with that. So yeah, I yield.
All right, thank you. I don't have my own conversations, and any one of the aldermen can speak to anyone at MSU about this matter. So from my perspective, Alderman Little, did you have more to say?
No.
All right, Alderman Vaughn.
We got a motion in a second.
We do. Are you calling the question? All right, that's fine. Let's do that. All right, we have a motion and a second. This will be a roll call vote. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Am I recognized?
Yes.
Could you kindly repeat the motion before we take a vote?
I'd be happy to. Move to close discussion and deny consideration of a proposed annexation plan and ordinance for the city of Starkville, Mississippi until after the 2020 census.
Thank
you. Okay, yes, sir. All right. Anything further? All right, seeing none, this will be a roll call vote. If you would, please answer yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
Alderman Sistrunk.
Nay.
Alderman Little.
Nay.
Alderman Walker.
Nay.
Alderman Miller.
Nay.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Yay.
Alderman Vaughn.
Yay.
All right, by a vote of 4-3, the motion fails. All right, so further discussion. Anything? Alderman Sistrum.
I'd like to say that as a city and as a board, we can do more than one thing at a time. And so we can talk about annexation at the same time that we're improving our infrastructure. We made a significant commitment to doing wholesale infrastructure improvements just within the last couple of months. And so we will be moving from just dealing with leaks and problems here and there to replacing decades-old infrastructure. So we've got that underway. Coming down the pipe towards us is a diversion of internet sales tax, something that has leaked out of our community over the years, but it's coming back to us, and it is restricted in use for infrastructure, streets, water, sewer. So we have hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next few years that are going to be coming in and will be used to supplement what we're already doing. As Alderman Little says, one of the things that's going to drive how much of that money comes to us is population, and another thing is sales tax that we're collecting on the ground here with our bricks and mortar stores. So we can do these things. We can do more than one thing at a time. But I do think the thing for us to do right now is to look at a greatly reduced area and deal with that. Next board through, the board after that can make their next stab at annexation. And it will be an ongoing process throughout the life of Starkville. It will continue to grow, or it will at some point die, or hold constant. So how do we move from the comments we've made tonight to outlining an area for Mr. Slaughter to revisit?
Okay, Mr. Slaughter, would you come up, please, sir? What I would like you to do is, you have heard what the comments that have been made as it relates to the areas that people are willing to entertain as options for annexation. So would you be kind enough to, with your experience, give us a thought about how we might move forward with those pieces of information that you've gleaned from this evening?
Yes, and if I may, and thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor and Alderman, as well as citizens in the audience. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I listened intently tonight as each and every one of you spoke, not only the Alderman, but the citizens as well. And I want to say just a couple of things, is that one, I'm very proud to be working for the city of Starkville. I listened intently to everyone, and I think this is how you move forward. Now, you all may have different definitions on moving forward, but I think this is how you move forward, is having these conversations. I also want to just mention my role as your consultant. I'm your professional consultant that you're paying for advice. Ultimately, what you do is up to this board. I am not pro-annexation for Starkville or against annexation for Starkville. I would not be here if I weren't retained by the city of Starkville. And since I am, I'm going to give you my professional advice. Some of you might agree with that. Some of you may not agree with that. And that's my job. So I'm really glad to be here tonight. If we rewind several months when I started working for the city, I said, let's define a study area. And that's ultimately, with working with this board and my firm, we ultimately defined a study area that we have here tonight. Back in August 21, I spent probably an hour and a half talking about the findings of that study and recommendations of that. So what I would like to pull out is I have a map, several maps over here. I know we have maps on the screen, the maps on the screen here. I'd be glad to put the hard copy down here so maybe this end of the board can see. But I see this as part of the planning process, whether it's annexation or anything else. Let's throw it out on the table, what our findings were. Let's talk about changes, if you need more numbers, adjusted numbers, we can do that. I'm not here trying to push anyone. This city, I'm here to answer your question. You make that decision, and I work at your pleasure. So, Mayor, if I could, I'll set these maps up where this end can see.
Okay. Joel, would you take it down to what you've heard us talk about, or you've heard the board who are interested in continuing this discussion talk about? Scroll it. No, the other way. The other down. And then move it over a little bit to the left so that we can get focus on that area to the right there, and then expand it out. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, like that. Okay, so what I have heard people say is the 82 corridor and the 12 area. Is that, and I'm seeing head nodding, so, Mr. Slaughter, is that where you're looking at there? We've got it up here on the screen, we've got it expanded, so.
182, the 82, corridors in here, 182.
And 12, 12 bypass, I'm sorry, not 12 bypass, 82 bypass.
Right. The 82 bypass,
Right.
12 coming up.
Right,
here.
so the 182 and 82.
182 and the 82. And let me say, in my opinion, just to be clear, I think with Alderman Miller and Alderman Carper regarding the multifamily, and I know that I discussed that last time. What I'm saying, especially in these areas where you have that multifamily, and Alderman Carper, I was just, if I could start over again, you and Alderman Miller were talking about the multifamily in this area. We're talking about the substandard, sort of the imbalance. I will tell you, and everybody has your different points you're looking at. I have the 12 indicia of reasonableness that the Mississippi Supreme Court has identified over decades of hearing annexation cases that I'm looking at. Because the burden of proof for annexation is on the city. To prove that it's reasonable based on those 12 indicia of reasonableness, not based on a vote or what I do want or don't want. And I don't know anyone out here, and I don't know anyone up here personally, just as working with the city. But there's, believe me, there's no planning if we just do what one person wants versus another person. It has to be done in an orderly manner, and that's the reason the Supreme Court has identified the 12 indicia or indicators of reasonableness. When it comes to these highly developed areas, you just don't see that a lot around the state of Mississippi. In my opinion, I just want to be clear, in these highly developed areas, those areas need municipal level services that the city of Starkville can provide. And we talk about police protection, we talk about fire protection, but some of the other areas that they need are planning and zoning and building and code enforcement. And I respect every word that was said, but when it comes to substandard apartments, they meet some type of minimum standard, like you said, Alderman Walker. But if you don't have those areas in the city, one of the indicia is the need for planning and zoning, the need for building codes and enforcement. It's just going to get worse. If it's not good now, just wait 5 years, just wait 10 years, it's going to be even worse. I certainly agree with what the board is looking at when you're looking at this northeastern part, as if I had to point to an area, I would go right up above this line, right where Area 3 is.
What is that blue? What was the blue you spoke of, Alderman Walker?
I was just referring to the blue on the map, but that's.
Where is it?
It's public, it's like cemetery or a church.
Where is that? That's the cemetery.
That's
coming-
That's not the artesian.
No, the cemetery is down lower than that.
This is along Blackjack Road.
Right down, okay.
This is supposed to be a public, semi-public. But in my opinion, as your expert and consultant in this, I think from this area up is of extreme importance. Not just, and this is not just about the city of Starkville, this is about this community of Starkville and that surrounding community. Over $100,000 in sales taxes going to Jackson and not coming back. A lot of that is where these businesses are located up here, especially the auto dealership. It's hard to find around the state where you have an auto dealership and the density of this development outside a city. And I know I don't compare Starkville to Oxford or vice versa. I have a lot of clients all over the state, but believe me, there's a lot of them I wish were that I could say are as good as Starkville. I'll tell you that. You know you're a good community. You keep your taxes low, but this is about the community. And I think I agree with what a lot of y'all are saying, that maybe we need to have a more focused area. This is part of the process. So I just want to sort of clear that up about there. Hey, if you want to look at a more focused area, a phased annexation, I think that's a smart thing to do. And I will work at the direction of this board. If you want some revised numbers, I'll be glad to do that for you.
So you're scratching off everything from Area 3 down in your recommendation?
I am not scratching off one thing.
I see some marks. I was out, but all of Area 1's been marked off. The north has been marked off.
This was a work map
Okay.
that I just saw right before the meeting that I wanted to bring to the meeting at the mayor's office. It was right before this meeting, and I have maps, all sorts of maps under here that I brought from my office. And this was one that the mayor had been working with. So I said, why don't we just bring it in here and present it to the board? So this has been marked off, this has been marked. I haven't made a mark on this map at all.
Now,
Alderman Carter?
well, just Alderman Little had some comments about low-hanging fruit, and that, in my opinion, you see where we're at in the room now, guys, and everybody involved from this side and that side, as a community. I mean, that's, you know, that's okay. I mean, I see at some point, you know, going out and grabbing low-hanging fruit, which most people come in town, they would want to see a gateway entrance coming in from Columbus. But some of this, you know, through the calls and riding around and looking doesn't make sense to me. But if you know, if you're speaking of grabbing some commercial issues and some areas that it is an odd block. That's Mississippi State with a big white block sitting in the middle of it? No, the very northeast.
It is, that's their property
That's it.
as well.
I mean, so he had some very valid comments on some of that, and it is kind of odd that it's already not in the city limits, but some of this big rural area, you know, I never would have agreed with anyway, but I think those were valid
And
comments.
just so, Mayor, if you will call on as opposed to me.
Yeah, Alderman Sistrunk has her.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I thought you were done, Alderman Carver?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Alderman Sistrunk.
You threw out a very tantalizing prospect, phased annexation. What would that look like?
Well, if I were making the important part of this, and the points I was making at the last meeting, and I want to make sure they're clear, and I'm going to be a little bit redundant, but I would look, what's most important to me would be north of this line, right here. And he has it positioned exactly what I'm talking about, the most southern boundary there, just south of Area 3, just so those of you in the audience. I think this jumps out to me.
Can you pull that up? Just make it a little higher on the map there, Joel.
As needing
you.
municipal services. There's a lot of sales tax diversion in this area along Highway 182. So if I were drawing a line, and believe me, I work with the stretch of this mayor and board, but you're asking me the question, Alderman Sistrunk, and I think from here on up, I think it's important. You could even extend this on to the east. I'd have to make sure what the rating bureau, and let me just remind everyone, we were studying on over to the east where the high density residential is in this area along,
182?
Yeah, along 82 here, just south of 82. St. Andrews, the Links.
That's not the links.
Pardon?
That's the Highlands?
The Highlands.
Yeah.
The Highlands.
Well, this
Everybody
says
knows
the street name was Links, but the
I'm sorry.
Highlands, yes.
Yeah.
But that would require another fire station, a ladder truck, as well as 9 or 10 new firefighters. So we decided to bring this back. In some lesser developed areas with my conversations with Ty Wyndham with the Rating Bureau, that we might could extend further east for some lesser intensely developed, that planning and zoning could help guide the growth and development before it happens in a substandard fashion. And not being critical of Oktibbeha County, I'm proud to work with them on their comprehensive plan. And I take my hat off to them for doing that. But right now, there's no planning, zoning, building codes. These areas need it. This is the future of the city of Starkville, in my opinion. I agree with what a lot of you said about this being gateway into the city. And so there's nothing wrong. Hey, if you feel like, hey, maybe this is a little more we need to take in that. I'm not trying to push any annexations on anybody, but if I were drawing a line, that's an important area, in my professional opinion, that the city should strongly consider taking in.
All right, thank you, Mr. Slaughter. Alderman Miller? Alderman Miller was coming forward.
Mr. Slaughter, what do you see when you talk about those substandard apartments, I guess? What is the benefit of the city? I mean, could you elaborate that on a little further? Because that is a major concern of mine there on, and I certainly don't disagree with the ad valorem taxes that come in with that. However, in my opinion, of course, we're not looking at that area yet and looked at the numbers of focusing in on that area with the way it stands now. It's just my opinion. It concerns me that at the end of the day, it's just all very flat. So from a revenue perspective, I'm not seeing the benefit of taking in those the apartments. So my question is, as you've proposed it, perhaps looking forward, explain to me your a little bit more, maybe a little bit more in depth. What is the benefit? Because I made the comment, those have already been developed. If we were going to control that area, it'd have been nice to annex it 15 years ago before those apartments came in and control it like you're saying with planning and zoning. That makes total sense to me. My thoughts now are it's developed, similar to Alderman Carver, I believe. What is the benefit? I mean, how are the city you said there's a need. How are the city services going to help those multifamily areas that perhaps say the county can't help those areas, and what is the true benefit to the city beyond revenue?
First of all, and I'm going to agree with what you said, even though I don't have the first-hand knowledge you do from 15 years ago.
Right.
That it would have been nice to have annexed this area prior to development. The fact is, you can't go back. They're there. The fact that I predict is, and it's not there now, but more is going to happen. So I think, yes, it should have been annexed long ago, and that's the reason I strongly think it should be annexed now. Alderman Carver mentioned that it wasn't built to the city's building codes, and I take that as face value. I haven't inspected those, but I do know this: the city of Starkville has good quality building codes, code enforcement, and planning and zoning. And just because an area is developed, and this is not all developed, there's still more room to develop. When you look at the pink or salmon colors on those maps, that's vacant land. So the city of Starkville does a great job with their comprehensive plan, their zoning ordinance, their code enforcement. This area needs that. Now, does that change what's already there? Only time can do that. What this will do is give guidance and direction for the future, from infrastructure, from code enforcement. In addition, I believe that area to the east of the city is a Class 10 fire rating. Class 10 is the worst you can get. That's the worst. That's unprotected. If you talk to Mr. Ty Wyndham with the Rating Bureau, Mississippi State Fire Rating Bureau, Class 10 is unprotected. This area would go to a Class 4, which would see tremendous savings from fire insurance premiums. In addition to that, you would have a first responder. The city of Starkville would be a first responder to these areas, not on a mutual aid, but would be a first responder. We've had the engineer put together water and sewer plans and cost estimates, which I presented about 6 weeks ago, that would benefit these areas from fire protection. So I think there's a lot to offer. It's not going to change it overnight, what's there now, but I do think immediately after annexation, this would give this area a new direction, which is, hey, when people ride through there now, it's the city of Starkville, Mississippi, is what people will think. And, but I think with this area developed, if you looked at one indicia, the need for municipal services, it comes right to the top.
All right. I have a question of our insurance person. When it relates to these multifamily units that were built just on the east side of the university, hello, just built on the east side of the university, in order for them to get a bank loan, would they not have to have some standards that they meet? Whether it's sprinkler or, I mean.
Well, there's different rating classifications they would fall under as far as underwriting goes, but yeah, that would surely be, I'm not so much in the commercial side of it, but surely they would ask if they had sprinklers, and if they didn't, possibly increasing the rates and so forth, but it's always a factor.
Yeah,
But
well, I would have thought,
going from a
again,
10 to a
it's not
4 is huge.
Huge. And not only for the commercial, but for residential as well.
Yeah, well, we have the.
Single-family residential.
You showed some of those numbers in that
Yes,
initial
and I have those with me.
information that you provided us. Alderman Carver, did I see your
Yeah,
name
that's
again?
what caught my ear was the 10 to 4, and that is huge. And then secondly, I was going to ask if the chief had been involved when, so basically some of these apartment units are upwards of 700 or 800 beds and just a few acres. So I would assume they're called, you're putting 800 more or less going to be college kids on a 10-acre block, and I'm asking, have we got some figures where, if we had X amount of people, how many more officers is he going to have? Are we going to go with that? So, and it was leading into probably a hard question for you. Is there a formula that shows kind of return on investment? Do you have to get X amount of tax dollars to be able to sufficiently provide for those people that are living there?
And I will tell you emphatically that's a no, sir. Being just as respectful as I can. And we just completed an annexation in the city of Laurel, and the judge just ruled on this. But it was a poor area that couldn't help themselves. Class 10, no sewer, nothing. And the city of Laurel was looking at spending $16.5 million in water and sewer improvements. And those people needed it, and the judge recognized that. If you tried to put a factor on it like you're asking, and it's a very reasonable question, it would never show that that's a reasonable annexation. But the city of Laurel saw the need, saw that that's the future of their city, and the sooner they step in, the better, and that's what they're doing. So it's hard to just put one formula up and say yay or nay. This is something we have to look at the overall 12 indicia and look at whether it's reasonable or not. And that's what a judge in the court will do.
Alderman Sistrunk, I saw your hand.
And I saw Chief Nichols popping up to talk about the policing for those areas. One of the things that is attractive about that is it is a very discreet area and wouldn't require the additional policing that the original study area included. It's much more discreet and much more finite. One thing that we've talked about several times is how difficult it is to recruit and retain police officers. So that's going to factor into this. But do you know how many deputies the county, because the county's currently...
Oh, pick me, I know the answer.
Well, could one of y'all tell me how many deputies?
Six at any one time police the whole county, or deputized for the whole county. So
Which is probably over 500 square miles.
I don't know what the size of Oktibah County is, but 6 on any one shift.
Most on that side of the county.
Yeah.
So that's a number that if 6 was the number, that's a number that keeps us well ahead of what's happening in that area now.
Well, we're working on figures on that. Captain Outlaw is, so we're going to hopefully have those for the mayor in the next week or so.
Okay.
All right. Anything further? Okay, seem to be at a point now where we may provide Mr. Slaughter some direction to go forth and come back with something that fits more closely aligned with what this board has indicated they're interested in. Do we have an opportunity for someone to make a motion of some sort?
I'm not sure that I'm ready to make a motion yet, but I'll say that like you previously did for this initial study where you had 3 study areas and then MSU for the next slice, I would be interested to see the numbers and things associated pretty much from that line that you draw just below the
Area 3, the blue.
From there back to the north. I would be interested in seeing that. I would also like to see, as a separate piece, I would like to see, if it turns out to be standalone, that's not in the cards, I would like to see what it looks like from what we had previously talked about, the 182 corridor and the 82 bypass corridor. I would like to see those two pieces, one where it's all together and one where those are independent, so I can make an informed decision on whether or not I think that is right. Some of the marks on there, it was a conversation that I had with the mayor, just taking the 6 weeks and looking at, I would say, fine-tune comb and trying to look. And I know we had originally said that's 750 feet off of the bypass there. But looking at it, I think there was a couple, one that looks like it to me, based on the tax map that I was looking at, it looks like that splits one piece of parcel. I think we'd like to probably not do that. So, whether or not, you grab that one parcel, and then there was another piece up there, where, which road is that?
Barbecue Road.
Yeah,
He's pointing to it
it's
right there.
Barbecue Road, but there's a road that connects to it, and the name just escaped me.
This one is Stowewood.
Yeah.
To the south.
Right, I
It
mean.
comes into the city, out of the city.
Comes
back
out of the
into
city for like, maybe, I don't know, a quarter of a mile, and then comes back in, so you'd have a quarter of a mile of basically no man's land. I think, so the fine-tooth comb, I think we just need to clean up whatever the line looks like, just to make sure that we don't end up doing anything. I would say the other piece that caught my attention was at the interchange of 182 and 82. We had decided in our previous map that we weren't interested in necessarily the Highlands, which is the right there. But a big part of that block, and I get it, is like a section line or something where the red line is. But we would be right now, as drawn, getting a fair amount of what amounts to their driveway or their road. If we're not wanting the Highlands, I don't want to.
It is private. I talked to Supervisor Trainer, and it's a private road.
I wouldn't even want to draw the line that shows that is in the city. If it's theirs and it's somebody else's, I would like to see what that looks like. And so just how that manipulates around that, I would be interested to see, because that road is, we're not going to get the Highlands. I don't want to maintain the road.
And the way we would do it is the way I just drew it, is following the south right of way of Highway 82 bypass.
And then that would come back, if it were to come back to the west.
Come back up and then come back into this point.
Yeah. And same thing on the west, though. That's where we're getting it from, essentially where you're looking it's where the Shell station is. That's where everybody drives it. You go to the road right there.
Old Mayhew Road.
Right there. That whole road right there to the right is all their driveway. The only thing
Into
that
the
road
Highlands.
gets to is the Highlands.
Okay, so what you're saying is if we could bring that on around.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And
Then whatever, but I don't think we need that road.
either come down here or come back in like that, either one.
Correct.
And I can look at the
Because
property.
that big pink parcel where you see right there, that's Mississippi State.
Yeah, right in there, okay.
So we don't need that piece.
I got you. And so, in this discussion, we were looking at that area as well as adding this, so we're looking at additions here, two small areas and then another area just east of 82 and north of Highway 82. And then right now, we're just tentatively looking at coming across and to the north of this area here.
Mike, could you let Mr. Walfer come up and show you where that piece in question you mentioned earlier while we're drawing on this map?
And while he's saying that, again, Mr. Slaughter, that was just, I would say what I would, certainly could come on. When I was on that, feel free to y'all make your best judgment on what, but I think try to make sure the road is clearly maintained and not split anybody's property.
And I'll tell you, I'll take this back to my office and make these revisions and send the map back down so you all of you can review it.
While we're, Mr. Wofford, I don't want to interfere with you finding that. So are we interested at all in going down to the north side of Poorhouse Road? where the
No.
development is, the housing development is happening?
Not at this juncture.
Okay, so nothing down south. Okay.
Mayor, I was never recognized. You gonna recognize the vice mayor?
Well, Vice Mayor, you've never been shy about saying something. I'm sorry, I missed you. Go ahead,
Well,
Vice Mayor.
No, I govern with professionalism, but I don't want to interrupt the chair. What I want to say is I always handle myself with professionalism. You recognize all the other board members, but you're the presiding officer. If we're going to recognize this gentleman here up at the front, which I have no objection, then we need to let other citizens come up here and be recognized about their property. You know, we passed the citizens' comments, and I have no objection. The gentleman from 3 wanted the property to be recognized, but let's be fair in this whole process. There may be some others who want to come up there and point their property out. So if they want to do that, we open it for one. We need to open it for the rest of those to come up front. So so when you start a process, we need to be fair and be consistent and treat all citizens alike. And one other observation I had earlier, Mayor, when just good, straight, clean talk. When I say nothing negative but very respectful, when we ask the expert questions, I'm not interested in hearing no personal opinions. You know, we are the policymakers. We don't, in my opinion, need to hear politics from experts here. So, but that's what I was going to mention to you earlier. But as for now, and that's my opinion. That's my opinion. But as for now, if there are others who want to be heard and show their properties, then we need to allow them to have the same time, process, and procedure, because the gentleman from 1 asked about the citizen comments. Was anyone else going to be heard at a later time? So obviously, if the board does this, is reopening the citizens' comments. So I'm just mentioning that. So I'm not in favor of opening the floor back up to anyone. But if we do, then we're going to need to allow anyone else who wants to come up here and identify their tract of properties. So I yield the floor, Mayor.
Okay. Well, this was a specific question asked by a specific alderman, and so Alderman Little.
I don't know if anybody is involved anymore in the area here proposed, are they? If they are, you're welcome to,
Well,
go get your marker.
Whoa, we're about to hold into a free-for-all, so hang on. If y'all will sit, and I'll give you a call if we're going to do that. If the board wishes to proceed with calling people forward to check their properties, then we can certainly do that, but not all at once. Thank you. Alderman Sistrunk.
Maybe there's a more specific question we could ask as opposed to where Mr. Wofford's property is. The question that was raised during citizen comments were areas that might be in the immediate future used for recreational purposes. And by recreational purposes, I assume it would probably involve hunting or fishing or those kinds of activities that you don't typically see inside the city limits. Are there ways for us to protect those particular kinds of activities while they're in the city limits?
And let me say, I think fishing is usually allowed inside the city limits, but
I'm not a sports person. I'm sorry.
Discharge of firearms can be a concern in developed areas, obviously. But I've had cities that, in annexing some vacant land, have prepared ordinances that define if you're so far from residential development, so far from the church during worship hours and on a minimum size parcel of land that you can hunt. I've seen that happen throughout the state. I think Batesville is one, maybe Grenada is another one.
So we can deal with it through an ordinance.
And even Brookhaven. And I'm not answering that as a lawyer, but as a planner, and the answer is yes, ma'am.
Understood. Okay, Alderman Carver, I saw your hand again.
I mean, it's 9 o'clock, so the thought would be, I know that the individuals who are actually affected by this have not seen this. What if he drafted this? Y'all did have a public hearing, people were able to come up, because I think it'd be discriminatory to allow one gentleman to do it and not everybody else. But to come up, 80 or 90% here may not even be involved with this anymore. So at this point, 9 o'clock at night, people coming up marking calendars, let's get it drawn up, what y'all are envisioning.
May I respond? Just
Sure.
do that?
Certainly, Mr. Slover.
And my thought here is this area that we're trimming back, so to speak, if I can use that, is still just a study area. There's no ordinance adopted, no ordinance before this board, no legal descriptions. The
this is still just a study area. I can see us coming back with the answers to this and opening this discussion back up at that time. But I'll work at the discretion of the mayor.
Well, I will, at some point, would like a motion that goes along with that. Alderman Miller, I'm sorry,
Mayor, I do want to be clear, and Mr. Ronnie Wofford, the gentleman sitting here, is my constituent, and I represent him, and so his comments are incredibly important to me. And he's waited a long time tonight with some indication to me that I would at some point ask him to take a look at his property that he is concerned about. So I'm elected to represent Mr. Wofford, and so I think it's very important, if he so chooses, that he is allowed the time to speak and express his concern specifically. However, Mr. Wofford, if you would like to come back at another time, I would leave that in your court. I'll ask you that question. It's up to you.
As long as I get to speak, I mean, I don't want to hold everybody up, and, you know my concern, bypass, and the areas you're talking about, like I say, will affect me, even on the reduced amount, so, it don't matter to me as long as I get to voice my opinion, and it can be changed if need be, or it's not set in concrete, don't matter to me.
Would you be comfortable if you and I had a meeting at some point and sat down individually and got a map in front of us and took a look and looked at what your concern was?
That's fine with me. My concern was that this was a final deal, you had no say whatever.
Correct.
So
Right.
that was my concern tonight.
Understandable.
I didn't know I needed to be up here talking tonight.
Yeah.
I was going to see what was happening.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Do we have, I'm sorry? Oh, yes. Is there someone who is interested in making a motion to reflect that Mr. Slaughter returned with a additional information relative to the line and north up, absent the Area 1, absent Area 2, absent the lower half, the southern half of Area 3, to come back to us with additional information?
Mayor, I have
I'm sorry.
a question
Mr.
for
Slaughter.
the board before that motion. I have a question for the board, but it's directed to Alderman Walker. And you have mentioned breaking out some areas separate. Do I need to come back with a study along these areas, or did I need to sort of break it out into 2 areas? I didn't quite understand that.
Well, I don't know if ultimately we're going to be able to get the entirety of from Blackjack to the north. So I think you can look at you can call it one area and look at all that as one option. And then I would like to see option 2, where you're including just that the bypass, the 82 bypass, and the 182 corridor, where you believe that it makes some other sense if it's just getting truly that corridor and some of that commercial. I think I'd like to see what options would be as if those were happen to be standalone.
So what you were asking is that we could study this all as one, complete that, and then eliminate some area south of that, and we're gonna have the numbers on a more northern area, 82, 182 bypass area.
That's right.
Okay.
Mayor, that's my motion.
Okay. All right.
have
Does
a
everybody
meeting.
understand that
Have a meeting.
motion? Okay. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
I have a second from Alderman Sistrunk. All right. We'll do a roll call vote. If you would, assume no further discussion. All right. All those in favor, please signify by, as the city clerk calls your name, please signify by saying aye.
Alderman Carver.
Nay.
Alderman Sistrunk.
Aye.
Alderman Little. Alderman Walker.
Aye.
Alderman Miller.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Nay.
All right. By a vote of 4 to 2, I'm sorry, motion carries. So are you comfortable with with that
ma'am.
information? All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for your staying with us and giving us your continued assistance and
I'd just like to say this in
expertise.
closing. I opened up with it's a pleasure working for the city and the board and the citizens. and I heard a broad spectrum of comments tonight, and not one time did I feel like I was being disrespected or anything. I want to thank you for that. I really do. Y'all are very professional and do a great job for the city of Starkville, and I never once felt like it was a personal or anything like that. So I really do appreciate that opportunity to work with you all as well as the citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Slaughter. We appreciate your time. All right, that moves us next to item C under Mayor's Business. Which
Move approval.
Okay,
Second.
consideration of special request. I have a motion for approval from Alderman Walker, a second from Alderman Little. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, by a vote of 5-1, motion carries. Going on down, we have under planning.
Move approval.
Well, the first one is the Community Development Director. Do you have I understand, do you have a specific salary? There's a specific salary range. Do you have a salary you used to?
It's listed in that range. I would say
Okay, all right, just want to make sure.
For me, salary is always commensurate with experience.
Just wanted to be clear. All right. I have a motion for, to approve authorization to advertise for the Community Development Director from Alderman Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Sistrunk. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Mayor,
I'm sorry, that was a discussion.
Mayor.
I apologize.
Can we?
Yeah, let's back up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was listening. You guys, would you mind taking that outside? Thank you so much. I'm sorry. We want to move this along as well, so thank you very much. Mike, take the map, baby. Go on out. And that map, yeah. Gentlemen, that map is also on our website, so you can pull it up and blow it up and make it as big as you like.
Mayor, can we get Nav up here?
Okay. Nav? Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Slaughter. Safe drive back. Nav, would you mind coming up, please?
Mayor, if David has the floor.
Yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Little?
Vice
Mayor Board.
Thank you.
Earlier,
Yes,
the
sir.
Vice Mayor mentioned the salary range. Is that fall based on our recent Stennis study? Is that in that range, or
Yes,
is this
sir.
a significant jump from where was Buddy at in there? 172?
77.
77?
Yes, sir.
So,
It falls within the category of that job range.
and that's where, from the Stennis study, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, may I recognize?
Let me make sure Alderman Little is.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, Vice Mayor.
Mr. Ashford, my recollection on this salary range, the minimum salary, you looking at the figure right now, you have that before you? Can you?
So myself.
Well, go, I need it, go get it. What I want to know, Mr. Ashford, what's the minimum salary, what's the highest salary for that position?
The minimum salary is $78,000 up to $98,429.16.
What justification, Mr. Ashford, as the Human Resource Director, that this person should make a upper salary range of $100,000? That's almost making as much as our utilities manager, and he's been here for a number of years with a wealth of experience. So, I mean, what justification do you offer to me for that being a maximum of $100,000 if the board so chooses for this particular position?
Yes, sir. When I was posting the position, I went back and looked at the information that the previous HR director had posted, and it was within that category. But since then, since 2014, when it was posted, that job range was at $65,000 up to $86,000. But since then, we've had some salary adjustments, and so I based the information that we have posted, that I posted on the agenda for $78,000 to $98,000, based off of the information we got from the salary study and what the current ranges are within the range.
Am I correct that the last holder of this position made in the mid-70s for this position?
It was $77,000, I believe, is what he was making.
And so now you're telling this mayor and board that we should pay this person at least another $20,000+ a year?
No, sir. I set the job range with a range of $78,000 up to $98,000. I'm not sure at this point what the board is going to decide on who they pay, because we haven't received any applications.
I understand that, Mr. Human Resource Director, but when the last director was here, I think, as you mentioned, he was making the higher 70s, and I think he may have gotten his last salary adjustment when he was here. And I just don't understand why the upper salary range is at $100,000, and when you have other department heads who here, in my opinion, has a lot of experience, has a lot of years. Even the highest paid department head salary is only about another $6,000 more than a new person that's going to come in and be on probation for 1 year. It just doesn't make any sense, and I just don't know. It doesn't seem to me that your data is substantiated. But if that's what you're saying to this board, then I'll just take that as an answer. But that's just very high for bringing someone in if the board so chooses. Of course, I understand the range, but that's a lot of money, almost $100,000 a year plus benefits, being the retirement, the Social Security, the health insurance. That is a lot of money. So I just wanted the answer to those questions. You've given your answers. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anything further, Vice Mayor?
I yield the floor, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything further? Any further discussion? All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, by a vote of 5-1, motion carries. Special event request by Kayla Gilmore to hold Starkville Veterans Day Parade honoring our veterans to be held November the 10th and have city participation with in-kind services. I have a motion for approval from Alderman Little and a second from Alderman Miller. Discussion?
We did insurance on that, Chris, was it in there?
Yes, they provided that.
Yes,
Discussion, Mayor.
yes. Discussion.
Ms. Gilmore, I certainly want to applaud you for all your efforts, but the Vice Mayor, hopefully you know by now, just is very consistent on these matters. So if I vote against one, I'm going to vote against them all, and hopefully you understand that. So with that being said, I'm going to cast a nay vote on that. So my vote is nay.
Thank you. Anything further? Any further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, 5-1, motion carries. All right, we have consideration of a preliminary plat, 18-10, request for approval for subdividing a 21.66 acre parcel into 2 lots.
Mayor, I move approval.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Alderman Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Sistrunk. All right, discussion, does anyone wish to have it discussed? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consideration of a variance, 18-09.
Gentlemen, thank you all for sticking around to the end for something that was going to be totally non-controversial. We appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, the next one is game day retreats for a variance relief from a front setback requirements. And
Approval?
okay, I have a motion for approval from Alderman Little. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Walker. All right, do we have a presentation? Is the applicant here somewhere? There he is.
Why do
back-
we need that for if we're gonna vote?
Well, there'll be discussion, and you may not
We're moving
know.
it from 25 feet to 20 feet, right?
Well, are you good with that? I
I'm
mean,
good
you
with
want to, okay, do we, any further discussion? We may save you the trip, Mr. Arlen. No further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
I'm sorry. Okay, nay, 1 nay. All right, by a vote of 5-1, motion carries.
Nothing personal.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your hanging with us. All right, we're moving under Finance Administration. This is the claims docket. Do I have a
Move
motion?
approval.
I have a motion from Alderman Sistrum, second from Alderman Little. Discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
By a vote of 5-1, motion carries. Okay, we have one more. This is the permission to allow Mr. Logan, Mr. Helms, Mr. Pokup, and Ms. Cox to attend the Mississippi Recreation Park. A motion from Alderman Little. Second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Sistrunk. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
We're
Okay.
going to close session. I think that was last time.
Well, nothing left. Okay, I have a motion to go into closed session. Alderman Little, do I have a second?
Second.
No, I have a second from Alderman Sistrunk. That's okay. No, I'm sorry. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of going into closed session to determine the need to go into executive session, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
He asked me a question. I said, I
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, everyone's back in. Sorry, okay, the board took action in executive session, and Mr. Latimer's gonna read one of those actions, and I will go with the other.
The board moved to approve and accept a right-of-way easement for underground sewer line on tract 117-26-002.01, and moved to approve and accept a right-of-way easement for an underground sewer line on tract 118-27-006.00.
And the board further approved the recommendation of the fire chief on the disciplinary action for the fire department. So, and absent that, we need a motion to
Move to adjourn.
recess.
Second.
This time. A motion to recess from Alderman Little, a second from Alderman Miller. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're in recess. Thank you so much. We appreciate everybody hanging